Good evening, everyone. We're just having a big me and Joe Priest discussion here, which is which is a graphic novel we don't remember, but it's on my shelf. Good evening, Wilson.
Good evening, my friends. How are you
Do
guys?
you remember the DC graphic novel, Me and Joe Priest? I think it was by Howard Chaykin. I'm not sure if he just wrote. It's on my shelf back there. It just happened to pop up like on the internet this week. I saw its cover, and I was like, "Ooh!"
I have no memory of that one.
I'm like, I remember. I think I have that on my shelf, but I have no idea what it was about. I cannot tell you.
That did not come across my radar.
I'll take comics I bought but don't remember for 100, Alex.
I just got inside because when I stepped out just for a minute, like anything, nothing, no errands ever take less than 4 hours. It's just the way it is. You go out, and no matter what it is, everything takes 4 hours, no matter what it is. I met up with my sister for a late lunch, and then next thing you know, it's like, let's go here, let's go there, and
Next thing you know, hey, time has slipped away.
Exactly. It's getting dark now.
A few minutes later than last week, it's getting dark.
Yeah.
Me and Joe Priest.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to dig that out and read it.
So they did 7 graphic novels.
Yeah.
The first 2 are Atari properties, Star Raiders and Warlords.
Yep, I bought both of those. I think they're on my shelf.
I do have Star Raiders, but I've never read it.
Did Ernie Colon do one of them, or Jose Garcia Lopez?
Jose Luis Garcia Lopez did Star Raiders. Dave Wenzel did Warlords.
Okay.
Then it was something here called The Medusa Chain. That's the one by Ernie Colon.
Yeah, okay. I have that one too.
Yeah, but
I don't remember any of
them. If they had the story descriptions here in the Grand Comics database, but apparently whoever submitted the issue data didn't bother even reading the stories.
Because
I may have gotten that book. I just looked it up online. I remember that cover.
Which one? The Medusa Chain? Or?
I don't know if I ever bought it. The Me and Joe Priest.
Okay.
Okay, so Me and Joe Priest does have a Chaykin cover. But the art inside is by Ron Randall.
Oh, okay. Wow. We couldn't have told you that. Who wrote it?
It looks like it had a gold cover and a silver cover.
Greg Potter. Who's Greg Potter?
Greg Potter. Don't know. But it was funny because I think Marvel started their graphic novel line first, and it was all Marvel characters. And then DC started their graphic novel line, and it was like, huh?
Yep.
I mean, not that I was against non-DC character. I'd rather read that with my taste, but I was like, the Medusa Chain, and it's know what I remember most about the DC graphic novels is the feeling I came in the middle of something. Like, here was a graphic novel, and it was part 5 of 7 I was reading, and I was just like, huh? I don't remember how true that was. For some reason, I remember that experience I was reading.
No, I mean, looking at the titles, it's more like you go to a restaurant for a burger, and all they have is kumquats.
Good evening, Comic Crack. Good evening, Comic. That's funny because I was just watching one of Don the Comic Book Junkies videos this week, and it was his video where he was saying, once again, he's a comic book junkie, and he's got 35,000 comics. I was like, well, I mean, I have 14,000 comics, and that's a freaking lot of comics. He was like, have comics taken over your life? Because they've taken over my life. They've filled this complete room. But he's been like I don't know, for the last 3 or 4 months, he's been going to this flea market and buying long boxes of comics. Hey, Darren's with us. Good evening, Darren.
Hey.
Hello, sir. Welcome.
So
welcome.
it's easy for comics to really multiply when you're buying long boxes of comics for like a quarter a piece. He was getting them for, so he was just piling stuff in that box.
Of course, another YouTuber who always starts his videos. Good evening, comic book junkies, Night Tiger Comics.
Yeah,
he did a video where he traded a whole short box for a Silver Age comic.
Wow, it's good to downsize that way.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That is a few comics. Yeah, 35,000. It's like whoa.
A lot of the comps I got in the. I'm sorry, Wilson.
No, I was going to say I could not tell you how many comics I have.
I can always have a database, but that doesn't count all my trade paperbacks. Which makes it more, but still not 35,000.
93, I started a database, and I was using, I don't even remember what program I was using, but it was something I made while I was in college, and then I don't even think they had the program anymore. So luckily I had a printed copy, and that's it. And then after that, I think I attempted to update it again, and then
it's just
once I was at Marvel and getting comps, because in my mind it was like, oh, they gave me these books, so I'm taking them all home.
Right.
Attempting to read them all. And so I did a lot of reading on the subway.
I'm glad you mentioned the comps. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So it was like, but then I would go through the comp boxes as well and go, do I have this? I think I have this. I don't know if I have this. I'll take it anyway. You know? And I was going to cons. So when I would be at cons, it would be like, oh, these are some great books from the 70s I never got, or the early 80s of characters that I like. So I don't know if I have a full collection of ROM comics, but I bought a lot of them from the back issue bins. Just going, do I have this one? No, I need this one, and then just buying handful of comics like that. I think San Diego Comic-Con was the first time that I really saw how many books you could buy for a quarter, and it's like I don't know how I'm going to get a lot of these homes. These are boxes and stuff. It's like, oh, well, if you want a short box, it's like, you know what, I'm good. This is enough. Because if not, I would have been mailing short boxes home from San Diego.
I'm glad you mentioned 93, 94, because when we were there during that time, that was the apex of the Marvel output.
Mm-hmm.
How many books a month? 140, 150, all that Marvel UK stuff, everything. And then we got all the comps from DC also, right?
Yeah.
Who also was at the height of their output, right? So that was a lot of comics a month, and then whoever was sitting around the offices, you said, Wilson, and spinner racks of sitting on like desks and stuff. So I don't know when it was. It might have been 10 years later. All that stuff from that. Not all of it. I kept a lot of it, but like I did donate, maybe a long box or two to my mom in education, just like to charities and stuff. But there was, and a lot of it was probably doubles, triples. Just all that stuff was that. I remember that Marvel UK stuff was ubiquitous on the Death's Head and all that stuff.
That was the stuff that was always in the comp box. No one wanted their Marvel key.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff.
Yeah,
I would be giving comps of books to my dentist because he had a lot of kids come in. So it's like, here's some books, and I gave them out for Halloween for a number of years when I lived in my other place because they were trick-or-treaters. Here in this place, no one ever does it. So it was like, so that was the way I was getting rid of a bunch of them. And my mom worked for a school for years, my mom and my sister, and I would make sure they would get books so they can, give it out to kids for reading.
Yeah, when you move to a new home, you can just weigh your collection. Nightmares. Yeah, that's exactly how a lot of people get rid of their collections. When they have to move to a new place, they're like, I don't want to move this. I don't want to move all my issues of ROM. I'm never going to read it again. That's actually one of the comics I got rid of over the years.
Same reason why dealers at shows the last day of a 2-3 day show have their discounts huge. They don't. The less they can bring home, the better.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're worried about how they did the show. Just want to make table or just make whatever the reason. But we talking about ROM? Is that what you were talking about? ROM?
That was one of those books that we mentioned.
A lot of great art and covers on ROM.
ROM was a solid book, and it was one I bought back when it was coming out. But over the years, every now and then, I'd run out of room. So I purge stuff from the whatever. I go, what am I going to? And Rom was one of those books. I was like, you know what? I'm never going to read Rom again. Kept a few of my favorite issues and got rid of the rest. And I've done that over the years with various series where I'm just kind of like, you know what? Am I ever going to read this again? No. So I may as well sell it, get rid of it, donate it, whatever I can.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy to get rid of comics, as you guys know.
Yeah.
The first issue I had of Rom was actually the last issue. Like I had this habit in the around that time where just the first issue I picked up of a series was the last issue. Master of Kung Fu was the other example I had from last week, but like Rom issue 50, I think was the last. Spider-Woman 50. There was a lot of stuff around 1983 that got canceled at Marvel.
That you got the last issue of.
Their Marvel team up. There was a bunch of comics in 83, 84 around there. That was the last issue because they were making room for new, Marvel team up went away. Then they launched Web of Spider-Man. Right. So they're making room.
Just last year, the last issue of G.I. Joe 300 from IDW came out, and that was the first issue of G.I. Joe I bought since issue 1. I was just like, I want to get it. And I also did that a few years ago with Witchblade. I was at the shop one week, and the last, like, Witchblade 175 or something. It was like last issue. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy the last issue of Witchblade. I've never read an issue of Witchblade before. May as well read the last one. So I got that.
And how did that work out? Did you feel like it completed a story arc?
It was okay. Actually, G.I. Joe 300 was good. I have to say there was no problem reading the story on that one. It was just, it picked up sort of where a story left off with the G.I. Joe attacking this island for some reason, but I was not lost in the least reading G.I. Joe 300. Not surprising, probably, since Larry Hama wrote it. He's,
right.
I loved it during its height, like around, I don't know, 84, 85 with all the...
I was always too old for it, so...
Understood it, but we mentioning Larry Hama, like he did such great character building with that, but the demands of, having to keeping out of characters for action figures and toys, I guess, made it really rough, but, it had a lot of great art, a lot of great covers. You had Zach covers, you had Michael Golden covers. It was just
what year did G.I. Joe #1 come out?
82, I think.
82? Yeah. So I was 16, 17. Mm-hmm. So I was too old for G.I. I remember I picked up the first issue just out of nostalgia. I was like, all right, I'll pick, because I got the big G.I. Joe toys were my G.I. Joe toys, not the small ones. So I was like, I'll pick up a G.I. Joe, see how it is. And it was like,
I was aging out of the toys in 1982. I was 9, 10 years old. So the Kenner Star Wars stuff was my big stuff, right? And then I was getting too old for toys and, starting to go to boy-girl parties and stuff. But I loved watching the animated series. I love the comics, and that company that I mentioned, Super 7, they make those great throwback. You have some of that stuff, I think, guys. But like they've been doing throwback G.I. Joe stuff. Like they even did the famed Silent issue,
right?
Number 21. They did a Snake Eyes variant from the and the actual box art of the bubble pack, right, is the from the cover of G.I. Joe 21. So like, all right, guys, that opened the floodgates for me to start getting this. I love what they do, Super 7. I love the licenses they have. I love what they do.
Darren, have you ever heard my secret Cobra salute story? No. I know these other guys I've heard. Okay, so it's G.I. Joe 119, I think it is. I have it over there. I finally got a copy of it. So I'm working in the bullpen, 1990, 91, whenever G.I. Joe 119 is coming out. And I'm pasting up the balloons. For those of you who don't know, we'd have the original art come through, which is 11 by 17. And in those days, the lettering wasn't done directly on the boards, because to save time, they sent the pencils to the inker, and they sent copies of the pencils to the letterer, and the letterer would letter it on vellum, which is a tracing paper, over the Xerox. And then we'd get it in the bullpen and have to white out the back of the lettering and paste up the lettering. That was our job. So one day, G.I. Joe 119 comes through page 1, and I'm pasting up the page, and I look down, and down at the bottom is a little figure about a half an inch high, Cobra Commander, I'm told, looking up and giving the finger, because he's like on a dock that juts out into the water, and there's like a plane or a helicopter coming down, and he's down on the ground as a down shot, giving the finger up at him. It was a Herb Trimpe issue. So I'm like, I wonder if they'll even notice there's someone giving the finger. Because it was only that high. And like printed, it's only like a quarter inch high. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell anyone. Pasted up. And not only did Herb Trimpe draw, I think he may have even written the issue. Not only did he draw it, he colored it. And he colored a yellow spotlight coming down right on Cobra Commander, giving the finger up in the air. And I was just like, no one ever noticed but me.
It kind of reminds me of a lesser example. I don't mean to deflate your example, but the infamous Star Wars C-3PO trading card with you know what I'm talking about already?
No, what one is that?
There was during the original. Paolo, you want to take over?
No, that was Wilson.
That was Wilson. Oh no, it was so the original Topps trading card 77, 78, somewhere in there. Like, so there's a C-3PO, and I guess it was, you know, they touched it up. They put basically a golden penis on C-3PO.
Oh, I think I remember. Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
The other one is the Little Mermaid box art, which that's in dispute, but that's the one that everyone pointed at.
And the Captain America.
I know that one.
Once again,
Captain America one.
It was the early 90s, and this happened at the printer. They were putting out a 2-volume Golden Age Captain America set. And since this was the early 90s, this is before there were a lot of hardcover sets. So this is an expensive set. And some guy at the print shop got fired or quit or something. So there's one panel of like Bucky strapped down to something being threatened. And on the yellow plate, he drew a giant penis on Bucky. And no one noticed until the book was printed. So that one's still out there too. Because it was only on the yellow plate. So it was hard to see.
And since it was done at the printers, I don't think we even would have seen a copy of it anyway.
Right,
it wasn't until
proofs or anything.
Right, we wouldn't have seen the proofs. And we had to, I remember Gary and myself, we heard about it, and they asked us to check in on it, and we went to the library to get a copy of the book, because the book was out for a while by the time we found out about it. And so they were the only person who had copies were Peter Sanderson, who ran the library at the time. And so we were looking up and down, it's like, yeah, it's in the book. You know, and I don't remember what was we just knew we had to confirm it. I don't know what kind of press release we put out because of it.
Yeah, I don't remember what was. I don't think they ever reprinted it, because it's not like it sold a ton of copies in the first place.
No, I don't think it did.
But it was an expensive.
It was a pretty expensive book. Yeah,
it was like a $50 or $75 book in like 1992, which was unheard of.
I think it was 2 books that were hardcover each, and then it went into a slipcase. Yeah. And I don't think many people took it out of the slipcase anyway. Yeah. So,
and it was Golden Age Captain America. Even if you buy it, you're not really reading it.
It's more of just a have. And this one, they were doing a lot of the Joe Simon and Jack Kirby stuff at that time.
I got 2 comics this week just to have. I got, where is it? A reprint of Invincible #1 to celebrate its 20th anniversary, and a black and white reprint of Invincible #1 for no reason except they wanted to put it out the Undeluxe version. They thought it was a cool joke to print an Undeluxe version of it, because
that'd be pretty funny.
Because The Walking Dead, they're reprinting as the deluxe version in color. So they're like, what if we took our color book and reprinted it in black and white and called it Undeluxe?
Are they equally priced?
Yes. They're both $4.
Yeah.
I think. Where's the price? Yeah.
They're
both $4. So
when I was selling comics late 80s, early 90s.
I wasted $8 this week.
Yeah, that's my collection. But
Not
there
a
was an
waste, but baby
earliest
content.
there was an early-ish issue of the Tick, might be number 8, but this is when I was selling comics in late 80s, early 90s. It was a logoless, I'm putting in quotes, error that got out, and I remember another seller, comic dealer telling me like it's an intentional, like they're trying to create like a little hype, because and this is why I started to learn a little bit about printing process, because he's like, there's not another plate that comes down, all of a sudden puts the logo like on the. I mean, I knew this already, but so the question was it really an error, or it was probably an intentional, like we're just going to put it out, get some intentions, but what you reminded me, and this was that stuff. This is 93, 94. Remember that Doctor Strange, Amy Grant?
Oh yeah,
that was a big deal.
Yeah.
That was a big deal when she sued or threatened to sue Marvel
for likeness rights. Yeah, and on top of that, she's like a Christian singer, so this is like an occult kind of book. So
that just reminded me. I didn't read the article because it just made me annoyed. There was some headline I saw today said something like, Doctor Strange was never cool until the MCU made him cool. I'm like, what? Are you high?
He was cool with all.
I think it's more like, do you need to be high?
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. That was one of the cool things about Doctor Strange. It was a trippy book, and he
was like the coolest of the early Marvel characters.
And when did he debut? Like 67, 68, or was it earlier?
Oh no, he was early 60s. He was
early 60s, and he was like, that was a book that was just going through all colleges. They were loving that book in colleges, because they were probably tripping out and reading that particular book.
Right, yeah. And they that's probably the blacklight poster to get a Doctor Strange one, right? Like,
yeah.
What was that book that I think Sven might have worked on it with an outside publisher. Pal, you might know there was a book of the collection of the blacklight posters.
That one's new. It helps to be high for sure to enjoy the Doctor, or so I heard.
With the blacklight posters, I don't know.
There was some collection recently.
Yeah, they just in the early 70s, Marvel put out a series of black light posters of their characters, like covers and things. They also put out
I don't know what a black light poster is, because I don't know if that's even something that.
Yeah, is that something that's around anymore?
I don't know.
It's my only recent kind of example of not a poster was when I was working for that company. Arcade went up for 2.5 years through last year. I was there when they released the Tron, like the home version of the Tron machine that had all kinds of, fluorescent blacklight responsive
For those
ink.
Of you who don't know what a blacklight poster is or was back in the day in the 70s, they would print posters where the ink would fluoresce in black light. Which in a black light is a black light bulb. I don't even know what kind of special light comes out of a black light bulb, but
purplish kind of.
Yeah, I don't even know what spectrum
like a purplish light.
But you replace your regular light bulb with a black light, turn it on, and your posters on your wall would fluoresce, man.
A good example would be Disney dark rides, like like Peter Pan and like Snow White, like those classic dark rides at Disney World, Disneyland, like which things are painted with that reactive ink. So in the early 70s,
Marvel put out a bunch of black light posters when it was all the rage. Or I don't even know if Marvel put them out or someone licensed them. I can't remember.
I believe it was licensed.
Because there was also a series of 2-color posters of their covers, which I used to have some of. They had like a Thor, an Iron Man, a Doctor Strange, but instead of being full color, they were 2-color, or maybe 3. No, I think it was 2-color, where they'd be like black and green. And they'd translate, the Iron Man cover into black and green or whatever. Maybe his was gold. But there were 2-color posters. I had some of those. They were pretty cool. They're from the early 70s. But just like last year, the year before, someone decided to re-release the Marvel black light posters. I think it's a book, but I think it's more like a portfolio case book.
Yeah, like an oversized.
And hang them up. But I heard complaints about that. It's like if you were to get the original Marvel black light posters, they're expensive now. If you can find them, they're not cheap.
Oh, I'm sure. Were they printed on paper, or was it like fabric kind of like hanging paper, right?
Regular poster paper. But it's like the book is oversized. It's pretty big. It's oversized, but it's not as big as the posters were. And some of the reviews I read of it were annoyed that they printed the posters on the back and the front. So if you wanted to hang up every poster, you couldn't. You can only hang up half of them at a time.
Without
not that I think anyone was hanging up 15 posters.
No. But now I think about it, like, my best guess would be IDW. It sounds like their kind of project, but maybe
I forget who put it up. I remember I read these complaints on Amazon too, that the ink didn't actually I'm having a hard time speaking tonight. The ink didn't actually fluoresce like it did in the early 70s. Whatever ink they were using, whatever their process they were using, wasn't actually black light ink that they used to use. So the ink, not only were the colors different, it didn't fluoresce like it should.
Defeating the point. I saw today they're putting out an omnibus of Marvel Age, the first 3 years.
I saw that too. 1 through 32.
Really?
Yeah, and in the annual, I will say this: if it does well enough when they do the following 3 years, that's when I started reading it. It's something I would consider getting. I used to love pouring through all that, and it was pre-Wizard, and but there was a lot of inside stuff in there that, like, as someone new to comics and learning about like the inner workings, was great.
I think I would pick that up just to read those early issues, because I did not read them until the late 80s. I couldn't even tell you what issue number I had, but
remember the calendars on the back covers? On the back cover, there's a calendar with the birthdays, and that's like how it was everyone on staff. It was like people in accounting. I feel like it was like wasn't just editorial. They give shout outs. It was like, wow, all these names of the company. Yeah.
Darren Auk drew some of those calendars.
Drew a lot. Yeah, drew a bunch of them. I always found it so fascinating to watch, not to watch, but to read, like the Rick Parker cartoons of the Boss.
Oh yeah.
Which was like, I think I probably read all those before I even looked at the photographs. So it was like, the people who worked at Marvel, to me, looked like a cartoon characters. And my first day as an intern, I do remember that both Tom DeFalco and Mark Grunwald were walking together, and it was like, that looks exactly like Rick used to draw them. It's like they not only do they exist, but they do walk the halls together, talking to each other, and arguing about something. It was like, wow, that's actually pretty cool.
By the way, Rick Parker has a graphic novel coming out, I think, in the spring. For those of you who don't know Rick Parker, he's a longtime letterer at Marvel Comics, and he also was the artist on the Beavis and Butthead comic in the 90s.
Yes.
The cartoonist Kayfabe guys did an episode on that, and they love his work. And so,
terrific. Well, I've read some pages on Facebook that he's posted. He's doing a graphic novel about his time in boot camp in the 60s during the Vietnam era, and it was quite well done and amusing. So I'll be getting that one when it comes out. I wish I knew the name of it, but I'll have to write it down for next week.
Marvel Age is where I first saw all the Fred Hembeck stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
I can't remember where I first saw Hembeck. It may have been in his own magazine.
For sure, for me, it was Marvel Age. And then the first issue of Marvel Age I got, I'm going to guess it was the issue that was cover day December 87. It might be. It was one of the Gru Sergio Aragonés covers. And what was in it was a breakdown, like a list in sequentially of every graphic novel they put out, which was unique back then, as you know.
Yeah.
And so, that's where, I don't know if I probably at the comic shop, I probably had seen some of them, but that was, I saw the Death of Captain Marvel and Murata the She-Wolf, and there was all this stuff that I was never seen before. It
was funny.
Awesome.
Before you got on here, we were talking about the weirdness that was DC graphic novels.
You mean that Fourth World stuff? They didn't put out a lot, right? At first.
Well, no, that Fourth World stuff was their most normal one. They put out Hunger Dogs. I was
Right.
just
Yes.
talking about they put out
Yeah,
me and Joe
the
Priest,
DC graphic novel series only had 7 books.
right?
Well, what-
The first 2 were with Atari properties.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, the third one was by Ernie Colon. Then it was the Fourth World. Then the 5th one was something that we had no idea what it was. Me and Joe Priest.
Yeah, which I have on my shelf, and I still don't remember what it was.
Well, when you say 7, what date was like the last of that wave? Because if you go later on,
1987. That thing didn't last very long. 85 to 87, I think.
Yeah, right
the ones I had, I don't know if this counts in your list, right? But like I had their Son of the Demon, the Batman one.
No,
I had
no,
this.
They're not on the list.
No.
Those came out.
They
That's
were
what I'm saying.
later.
It's like another era. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
sure. Because Marvel's numbering system. While Marvel stopped doing a numbering, they kept on publishing graphic novels quite regularly, but DC didn't.
Right.
What they had what they did most likely would be it would be prestige format. So the number of graphic novels they actually put out is very low compared to Marvel's.
But like that, the Son of the Demon was like a standalone hardcover.
Yeah. And then, right.
I don't even think they called them graphic novels because the graphic novels were all soft cover. So that was like when DC would put those out, they'd call them hardcovers.
Right.
There'd be hardcover editions, and then if they were the Dark Knight format became graphic albums.
Like the prestige format that was still
yeah. So they were calling graphic.
My understanding
albums.
My understanding from Sven was Wilson, I didn't mean to cut you off, but there was some like 3 or 4 issue like arcs in Marvel fanfare. The one that comes to mind, there's a Warriors 3 story in Marvel Vest, right? My understanding from Sven was that it was originally intended to be a graphic novel. Makes sense. Right. And it was, for whatever reason, they decided to break it up, into 3 or 4 issues of Marvel fanfare. It's beautiful stuff.
Yeah, but that's one of the reasons I stopped buying Marvel fanfare. Was in the beginning, Marvel fanfare was supposed to be prestige Marvel stuff. But after a while, it became inventory story, the comic. And I just it was like, all right, I've had enough. Because like I said, it came out, I stopped buying Marvel and DC right around 84, 85 and started buying all indie stuff, except for a couple things maybe. So it may have coincided with that too. But I forget what year. Marvel and fanfare came out in like 83 originally?
I believe so.
First issue is from 1982. It was bi-monthly until 92.
Oh, wow. So I missed all that. Even though like I have some friends who were like, so-and-so did a great story in Marvel fanfare 43. I was like, sorry, I was long gone. I don't know anything about it.
There was a lot of great stuff.
There comes after about issue 25 or so, you kind of have to pick out the stuff that's actually good.
That's probably when I stopped around issue 20, 25. But you know what's funny? I actually have that Warriors 3 in it. I don't know if they do them anymore. Back in like 2008, when there just were not that many comics I was buying monthly. So I started looking around for comics I could get in collected editions. Mm-hmm. And I've spent some of my money that way for a couple of years until Image started putting out a lot of good comics. But one of the things I'd pick up occasionally from Marvel, I think I picked that one up at a sale. It was they'd put out Marvel Premiere Edition hardcovers where they would like I remember I was actually reading some, like it was right about the time of Spider-Man Brand New Day, whatever year that was. And every 6 months or so, they'd collect the last 6 months issues in a hardcover for like $20, $25. I forget what it was. So I was buying, and they were like, and some of them were like limited Marvel Premiere Edition hardcover, only 2,500 copies or something like that. I think because it had a different dust jacket on.
Do you know what year around this one? Wasn't this when you were
2008, 2009?
Were you working at Marvel?
That was after. I was gone from Marvel. But they were I don't know how long they put them out for, but I don't think they put them out anymore. Marvel Premiere Edition. Let me see if I can get one. Marvel Premiere Edition hardcovers.
No, I've never come across those. But I wasn't really getting books at that time. Excuse me.
I know where some are.
The big deal, remember when Masterworks first came out?
They're all hidden away now.
Sorry, Jared, go ahead.
Oh, here we go. I was buying some Incredible Hercules in that format, and they're down there. We can see Marvel Premiere Edition.
Okay.
And this, I don't think this is one of the limited ones, but it was $20, little hardcover, collects, I don't know, 5 or 6 issues. Incredible Hulk 112 and Hercules 13, 14, and 15. Hulk versus Hercules when Titans collide. So I think 5 or 6. And this would come out like just a month or two after the last comic in this issue. But I don't think it was a pretty good format. If you wanted to read some almost current Marvels, $20, little hardcover. Why not?
I think they were doing those for like the bookstores and stuff like that they didn't want to carry individual issues.
Right.
So that was like the smallest trade you could kind of make that's not paperback.
And I think they'd come out with the trade paperback version of it later.
I remember, and this might have been from Marvel Age, when Marvel Masterworks were first coming out, circa 87-ish, right? Mm-hmm. Before they had all the digital production techniques. What I remember reading, so they would have to buy the original issues. It could be beat up copies, right? But they actually physically bleached out the color.
Theaxinization.
What is it called?
That's the process that Greg Theaxin invented in the 80s. And it was only when you didn't have stats of it or whatever. And he named it Theaxinization. And companies used to hire him like DC or Marvel when they didn't have their if they didn't have like stats or film of the old stuff. And you're right, he would actually bleach a copy of the comic.
Mm-hmm.
A physical copy.
To get clean line art from it.
Yeah.
I remember watching, for those people who are watching, there was a very talented, I'm talking about Pond Scummy now. Scott
Elmer.
And that's his preferred name.
Yes.
Right?
That's what he went by Marvel. He was first, I think he was a Romita Raider first.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Then he stayed on for many, many years because the Romita Raider program was gone as an art corrector.
And was the term they used for him art reconstruction or something very similar to that?
Yes.
Okay. So if they didn't have the cleanest whatever of like, let's say a Kirby page, they didn't have the cleanest film, fiche, anything of it.
They had no copy of it.
He'd have to go in and do some, ape Kirby style and do some brushwork in it. And
he would re-ink Marvel pages from the 60s. He would, blow them up, light box them, and take a brush and re-ink them in the same fashion that the page was, in order so that they could print it in one of the Marvel Masterworks.
Yeah,
that is amazing. Would you? I mean, does anyone do that? Is it all digital now? I've tried to replicate.
Oh yeah, there are still restorers who do that, and it's done digitally. Though there's a guy I follow on Twitter, Omaha Bound or something. I think that might be, who does bookbinding, but he's also been like restoring Micronauts pages to make his own version of Micronauts. So he scanned in the entire Micronauts series and cleaned it up and restored it so that he can print it himself for himself.
The gold and stuff.
All the stuff. Yeah. The whole thing from beginning to end, all 3 volumes. But I occasionally sometimes I'm like, these guys, because he showed his process, which is basically stuff, basically cleaning up the channels, mostly what you'd expect. But I was just playing with, but sometimes I like to go to, there's a site, I forget what it is. What's the name of it? I have it here somewhere. Let me find the name of it for you, just so you know.
It's not comic art fans you're talking about, right?
No, it's comicbookplus.com. And it has scans of public domain comics. So occasionally I just look for comics that I like there that I've never heard of, and look at the covers or whatever. And occasionally I just figure out how to clean them up.
It's comicbookplus.com.
Comicbookplus.com.
Whenever you say public domain, for some reason the title always comes to mind as Black Terror. You know why? Because I had that book, Ron Goulart's Great History of Comics, and I poured over to it came out in '86. I don't know if that was original printing, but there was that stuff that I would never have heard of because it was pulpy stuff from the '40s that was gone.
I learned of all that stuff in Jim Steranko's History of Comics. But there's a certain way you have to clean up stuff, and if you can do it for one page and make an action out of it, you can do it for everything. But to make it even easier. Just about. It depends on the scale.
Yeah, because every now and then I get a request, can this be done? It's like, yes. But it's going to take a while and it's going to cost some money. And then I never hear back from them again.
Yes.
Even trying to create an action.
Oh, I have before. It's not. But here's one thing that Adobe just put in the last couple of years that is good for it. That is good for comics, and especially for scans you find on the internet, which are usually not high enough res. If I was scanning it in myself, I could probably do it better. But you first thing you have to do when you're faced with one of these scans, you have to adjust for the yellowing of the paper. You do that through curves. You take out the cyan, the magenta, and the yellow that's in the paper. And then you have to adjust the black darker usually. And then there's a filter a noise filter that cleans up JPEG artifacting. And that's also good for the dots. Right. But now Adobe has also added in machine learning. They've got a neural something filters that they have a whole bunch of stuff in,
including colorize for old photos, which does okay.
Right, colorize works pretty well. Yeah, but there's one that also removes JPEG artifacting that works even better than their old JPEG artifacting filter. I was playing with that last night, going whoa, because it turns the JPEG artifact dots. Matter of fact, I think it works better as with JPEG artifacting. So it turns all those printing dots into solid color for the most part. It's not
right.
Yeah.
But if that, remember that Three Stooges book I bought a couple of weeks ago? That was,
yes.
Oh, man, it's on.
That was really just, there it is. It hasn't gotten away yet, which was just terribly. They just found some scans and barely cleaned them up. It's like, look, this is the one with all that terrible breaking up in the cyan plate and stuff. It's like if they had even done, if they had taken half an hour, they could have made these pages a lot better. But
well, that's that better. The pirates, all the pirates in the last few years have been basically just downloading the digital versions from the websites they say that you can't download from, but you can.
that comic.
But before that, they had very high quality scanning of all the old comics.
That comicplus.com I just mentioned has some pretty good scans in it. I mean, if you actually wanted to print from them, they'd have to be a little bit higher res, but the scans themselves are not bad. And I think they replace bad scans with better scans eventually.
That's an amazing resource. I'm definitely going to click around there and look at stuff from the 30s and 40s.
I've gone to it before a few times because once he talked about it, I opened it up. It's like, oh, I remember that layout. So I'm pretty sure I had looked for something there before, probably for a Daredevil project.
You probably had to look for something in 1997, and they haven't changed the layout of the website.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Do you know Mike's Amazing World? You know that's
yes. That's where I get my Rip, Read, and Tears from. I don't know if Darren has done that yet.
He may not have.
Hold on. He's new here. This is only, his third show?
Yeah, pretty much.
But I love just like the newsstand archive where I can go back and look at like, okay, this is what was out like April of '87, and that's what I bought, and that's what I didn't buy, and all that stuff. So I love.
Yep.
Well,
this is we'll show it to you. Let me get it set up here because I was late and didn't set it up right away. Let's see. Whoop, that's. This is called Rip, Read, and Slab. I pick 3 comics, or you can too. You can make them yourself.
Mm-hmm. On paint.
And like one comic you read, one comic you rip, and one comic you slab.
Oh, it's like
start with
F, marry, kill.
It's like F, marry, kill. Same thing.
Yeah.
Same idea, only with comics.
All right, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. For bonus points, which one do you dolphin? But we have to explain what that is.
Oh, we'll have to. I think I just had that. Let me explain what that is first, because I just had that here. Hold on. There we go.
Did you say dolphin?
Dolphin.
Yes.
Like that.
Paulo made us aware of this.
That
Let me show you.
That's very well known. Is that
we did not know this, neither Wilson or I. Let me show you this first. Let me present, share screen, window. There you go. How did the story go, Paulo? You tell it.
So the one on the left is the French edition of that Aquaman. And because the publishers of American comics in France were usually always had to run afoul of the French comics code, which was run by the government. They were not allowed to have women in sexually suggestive poses in children's publications. So holding a woman would be considered that. So they replaced the woman with the dolphin.
They weren't allowed to publish that cover in France. So with the woman, so they put a dolphin there. So now we've added to our Rip, Read, and Slab where you want to add a dolphin.
Meaning like I would change the cover or something?
Which figure would you replace with a dolphin?
Oh, I see.
You'll get it in a minute. We'll show. Okay. Hold on. Let me stop sharing this. And show you a let's go to, what did I have open? September 1978. So this one is right in my wheelhouse. This is my childhood right here. Mediocre Marvel 1978 comics. Which one do you want to read? Which one do you want to rip? And which one do you want to slab?
I'm trying to look at the
and Good Friday to you, 62 Lefty Blues.
What issue of Hulk is that?
17, Invaders 35, and Hulk 230.
I would probably. Oh God.
I bought all these, by the way, and they're all mediocre.
I can tell you I'd rip Invaders. I can tell you that, but like,
why would you rip Invaders?
I don't know. It's just the least appealing with the rate of me.
Invaders.
And they're also all. I know. I picked sort of covers with a lot of yellow in them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about that. It's a tangent question. After we're beyond this, rip Invaders, read Iron Man, and slab Hulk.
Why would you slab that Hulk?
I like the cover the best of the 3.
Yeah, sometimes that's how we decide. It's kind of like I figure if I slab something, I'm going to present it. So it's like,
to me, it has a little more distinction because the Hulk is so green. Has a little more distinction of the characters. Rather, the other 2 are so big. They're all very busy.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I try to pick 3 comics that are sort of equal in whatever. You know, you don't want to throw Hulk 181 in there.
A lot of blast and motion lines here. Yeah.
I think his Invaders is that Gil Kane?
I don't think any of these are Gil Kane.
No, not this one.
Let's see. Mine the comic says slab Iron Man, read Invaders, rip the Hulk, dolphin the tractor. So the Hulk will be throwing a dolphin at those poor farmers.
I'm going to read Iron Man because this is early Michelini, Leighton Romita.
Yeah, I think that's the best one reading wise from my childhood, I would say.
I'm going to rip Hulk because I've read that one and it doesn't fight a villain there.
Ah, he fights some farmers. I've read that one too in my childhood, but I don't remember.
Yeah, farmers annoy Hulk, Hulk destroy tractor. And I'm going to slap the Invaders because of all. There's something I like about that cover.
Yeah, I like that cover too.
It's a good.
They put
cover.
the cover copy inside the Human Torch's fireball. It looks great.
They did, yeah.
I did not notice that until you mentioned.
I would dolphin the wizard.
I'm going to read the Invaders. I'm going to slab Iron Man. And I think I'm going to rip the Hulk.
I think I'm with Paulo. I'm gonna read Iron Man, slab the Invaders, and rip the Hulk. What are you dolphining?
I think I'm going to dolphin Iron Man.
Yeah. You know what I'm gonna dolphin? I'm gonna dolphin. What's the name of that villain? I'm gonna dolphin the spy master. I'm gonna dolphin his nunchucks. He's beating Iron
Man with tiny dolphins.
Yeah.
Can I dolphin the corner box in Iron Man?
So there's just a dolphin flying out there
randomly.
Even today, the Leighton Romita Michelini run is the only one that I actually like in Iron Man.
Yeah, I bought all these and liked them as a kid, but Iron Man, the Michelini, Leighton, JR Jr. Iron Man run was a favorite.
When I first started reading 86, that's when Leighton, Michelini were on. Wait, who was and Mark Bright? Maybe that was
Mark Bright. Yeah, he was there.
Yeah, I thought the Iron Man looked. I thought they drew Iron Man so well, like with the armor shine. I thought it was great.
Yeah,
it went to Armor Wars pretty early when I was reading it.
Yeah, but this run here, I mean, Iron Man has is the most glamorous that has ever been.
I would say what Michelini did and Leighton with their writing was they were the first ones to they made Iron Man an actual millionaire playboy. Before that, he and every other millionaire playboy in comics was only pretending to be a millionaire playboy.
Yeah,
he was an actual millionaire playboy in their one. That's what made it so good.
Yeah, I remember a line from one of the comics at the time. Maybe I'll buy that Maserati. I've been taking a look at. I haven't bought a new car in weeks.
Yeah, and he was hitting on women, and actually, not just hitting on them, not hitting on them to keep his cover, hitting on them to sleep with them. So it was like a completely different thing.
Also, the cast of characters, it was never that good. I don't like Happy. I don't like Pepper. I don't like Michael O'Brien. I don't like Marianne Rogers. I don't like any of the previous girlfriends. And Rhodey, Mrs. Arbogast, the best character ever from Iron Man. And Bethany Cabe, which was a girlfriend that could actually be with Iron Man in a mission instead of being
it was
kidnapped.
A good book. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. was playing the Iron Man from this era. Who he kind of became after that too. Like I said, he was. Yeah. Bruce Wayne is not a millionaire playboy. He just pretends that's just his cover. He made Tony Stark a millionaire playboy for the first time. Really. And I can't remember that Invaders one because I liked the Roy Thomas, Frank Robbins Invaders was my favorite of the even though neither of those two was my favorite. I liked the historical angle of it.
Was it always set in World War II Invaders?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
that's what I liked about and Roy Thomas, of course, was obsessed with Golden Age characters through his entire career.
Right,
and he was obsessed with Golden Age characters and Invaders. So he brought back a lot of these Golden Age characters who, as a kid, I knew nothing about, but I just thought it was cool that they appeared 30 years ago, which was a long time then. Now it's like a blink of an eye.
The Invaders book, did it exist at all in the 30s or 40s, or was it created like in the 70s?
It was created in the 70s. It did not exist before then.
And there were no team books in the 40s. And All-Star Comics with the Justice Society of America was not a team book.
Oh, really?
They would have a meeting, and then they would all split up to go on individual missions. There was not a superhero team before the Challenges of the Unknown.
And this was Captain America, the original Human Torch, and Submariner, the Golden Age versions of them, in the 70s.
When you said about, go ahead.
And I think I was not a Frank Robbins fan. His Captain America that he drew just I thought was so wonky in the Captain America book. But in the Invaders book, I liked his work because he got to draw a lot of historical stuff, which he was good at.
Mm-hmm. When you say that Roy Thomas is big in the Golden Age, that that's what I read.
Says the Beast was a furry playboy while on the Avengers also, but that's when when he arrives late because of partying with a couple of but all his stuff was off camera.
Yeah, and Steve Englehart, he changed the Beast's personality when he joined the Avengers. Of course, he did it with a twist. Oh, I just smoked some pot. No, I'm much more mellow.
When you say Roy Thomas, it makes sense because he wrote from DC. He wrote All-Star Squadron,
right?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even read that one. He was too obsessed with Golden Age characters then. I was like, I can't take this anymore.
No, you should take a look at some of his articles on the original Alter Ego.
Oh yeah.
I really like though. So they canceled All-Star Squadron after 5-6 years, but then they started Young All-Stars, which I got. It was new when I was starting to collect, so it was number one. Why not get it, right? But I really liked at least the art on the first 6 issues. At least I thought they were really cool. Kind of like I wasn't even understanding it was like a World War II. I didn't know what I was reading. I didn't really get it, but I thought visually it was really cool. I love
But this Invaders number 35 was I can't remember who did it, but it's the post Roy Thomas, Frank Robbins era, I think. And I think Invaders only lasted till around issue 40. And the last, 5 or 6 issues were real choppy. It was kind of like there was different teams on it, different creative teams on it at different times.
Who else was on the team, like Golden Age Vision and stuff like that?
No. It was Captain America, Human Torch, Submariner, and their sidekicks. So they had Bucky and Toro. Mm-hmm. Then they introduced people like throughout it, like Union Jack would come on. Mm-hmm. The Liberty Legion, who was, I think they were the Homefront guys.
The Liberty Legion were stand-ins for the Mighty Crusaders. No, not for the Mighty Crusaders. Yeah, they were because they all resemble the characters from Quality Comics.
See, I didn't get that as a kid. Miss America, she was one of the Liberty Legion, right? Spitfire was one of the ones who appeared in the Invaders regularly. She was British.
Miss America and the Wizard were original Marvel heroes from the 1940s.
Right. So they came back. They were in there too. So it was mainly the big three you see in the corner box, their sidekicks, and then other characters would come in and out.
Characters that already existed that Roy Thomas used. So it was the Blue Diamond and Jack Frost. The thing is, most of Timely superheroes lasted for very few issues, and sometimes. For example, the Black Widow, as the first story and the last story are 2 years apart, but there are only like 8 stories, and it's kind of the same with the Black Marvel. And most of those characters don't actually appear in the Invaders, so I think Roy had some favorites.
Though I have to say, the character that blew every young teenage boy's mind in the Invaders, that was like, what the heck is going on here? I'm not sure, but I like it. Was they came up with these two characters in like issue 17 or 18, Warrior Woman and Master Man, two Nazi characters. And Warrior Woman was in this all leather bondage outfit with a whip. And it was just like, whoa, what's this? I mean, there was clearly something different about Warrior Woman, and when you're reading it as a 12-year-old, but you had no idea what it was. Because I had no idea what bondage was when I was 12-year-old. But clearly she's not in a superhero outfit.
And Master Man was actually American. He was a fifth colonist.
Yeah.
And that was part of the idea that Aryans should breed.
Yeah.
And when they were both changed genetically, Hitler wanted them to mate. But a Warrior Woman hated Master Man. Yeah. And he was sort of her cuck boy because he was always pining after her. Why don't you love me? I don't want to love you. I just want to whip you because you're useless.
Well, the reason I mentioned Golden Age Visions because I remember there was that panel. It might be a sequence in Marvel's Alex Ross where they has the Invaders team kind of in parachutes descending on something, and maybe did he?
I don't remember the Golden Age Vision being in there, but
no, he's not in there. But he does appear in the '90s miniseries.
I see. Okay. I mean, it was interesting. I mean, when I started collecting in the mid '80s, like I had no idea there was Golden Age, Human Torch, Vision, Daredevil. Who else am I thinking of that was like kind of reimagined for later on, like in the '60s and '70s and '80s. All those. Who else was a character that I didn't know that Namor had gone back to like 1939 or whatever it was.
I knew that from reading The Invaders. That's where I learned all about that stuff. Because they even reprinted, it may have been Submariner #1 in like issue, because once again, it was the 70s, and when the dreaded Deadline Doom struck, they just put a reprint in there. Or sometimes they just stick a reprint in the back. And one of them and they reprinted some of that terrible reproduction. Because I didn't realize until many years later that the original Submariner stuff was done on dual shade paper. So it has this so Bill Everett was getting this real underwater quality from the dual shade paper. But, 19 set stats in the 1970s of the 1940s dual shade paper was not that good to be printed.
Right.
And it just had the early Submariners, when they printed them, just had such a different look. It looked old. I mean, not the art style, but the actual printing looked old.
It looked old when it was new. Is that what you're saying? Like it already looked.
No, I'm saying, when it was printed in Invaders new, it looked old. It looked like it was from the 1940s. With other stuff I've seen printed from then did not. But that's because it was on dual shade paper, which is that paper which I didn't even know was around then. You could get two different gray tones on it by painting with a chemical.
A certain solution.
Like John Byrne used it a lot in the early 90s on his Submariner, as a matter of fact.
He might have used it on also that Silver Surfer one shot he did with Tom Palmer.
Yeah, he might have used it on that too. I remember buying Captain 186 and 186 and feel like I got scammed. Loved the covers, hated the inside. Which is Frank Robbins. That is some of my least favorite Frank Robbins stuff, was his Captain America stuff there.
Who was on the covers? Also Frank Robbins, or is it someone else?
I don't remember. But if it was, they were better than the insides.
186, 187. I don't think it was Gil Kane doing covers anymore, but might have been still Buscemi.
But I remember getting those issues and going, ooh, because everybody's in these incredibly awkward positions all the time, and it's like, whoa.
When you're talking inventory stories before, so Marvel Comics presents,
right,
bi-weekly or fortnightly, maybe was the term I think they used, but each store was 8 pages, right? So they're talking about I understand it. I mean, you have an inventory story; it's like 8 pages long, and some stuff was training ground for it could be a bullpenner, it could be someone.
There were Gil Kane covers. Okay,
I really like Gil Kane stuff. I didn't discover it until later on, but no relation, by the way, between me. But I remember there was some inventory stories in Marvel Comics Presents. I'm talking like not an ongoing story, like a self-contained 8-page story. Some of it was just like really filler. But listen, to give new pencilers a chance.
Right. I like anthology stories, anthology book. Not a lot of people do, but I was always, if you're going to read an anthology, you have to be okay with not liking all the stories. You've got to know that.
Sure.
The last got an anthology here. You know what? I don't even like calling this one Creepshow an anthology because there's only 2 stories per issue.
Who's publishing this?
This is Image.
Oh,
I think there's some new Creepshow TV show or something it's tying in with. This is 5 of 5, though they say there's going to be a volume 2. And the first story, some nice artwork. The first story I didn't even get. It's called Thirst Trap. And it's somehow a Dorian Gray type story where the guy takes selfies and that keeps him young. And there's some demon who he has to feed somehow, but I'm not sure how. And then some guy who he had a one-night stand with stole his phone. So then the demon showed up. So then the Dorian Gray guy grows old and gets eaten by the demon. And I'm just like, what? I mean, none of this. I didn't understand the mechanics of any of the horror. I was just kind of like, why would he eat him? Wouldn't he want his phone? But hasn't he been feeding him with these selfies all these years? I don't know. What was the deal? There was nothing explicit about the deal that he made with this demon. That guy. The whole time I'm reading the story, I'm trying to figure out exactly what the deal is and how he can break the deal. But how he can lose out on the deals besides, I guess, losing his phone for a day. It's like you have to take a selfie a day. Nowhere in there did it say that. So it's kind of like.
Do you have any of the new heavy metal? Though there was some controversy recently about like there was some management shakeup there that some I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't led to that. I haven't checked that. It's just been too expensive for me to check out.
Yeah, I don't own any of the original heavy metal run though. I mean, obviously, the ones I would want would be the Mobius stuff. And
I had the only time I read heavy metal regularly was in the 90s, back when magazine subscriptions were so cheap that I got like a 3-year subscription.
They just wanted circulation for that ad.
For $18 or something.
Yeah.
Like that it was like $1 an issue.
Yeah.
And all magazines were like that. And they just, like you said, they just wanted those circulation numbers to sell ads.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So that's when I read heavy. And it was some pretty good stuff, I have to say. I mean, I don't really remember much. And most of it was European, but it was good European comics.
That's one of the things I had to wrap my head around when I was in the marketing of comics was like with comics, most of the revenue is from the cover price, or via the chain, versus the ad revenue in the magazine world, right?
They don't even have ads anymore at comics. Well, neither do magazines.
Very limited though. Though I have a huge nostalgia for a lot of the ads that ran. Well, a lot of people do. I'm sure the classic ones in the 60s and 70s with all like the nail away stuff, and then it became like video game ads later on.
And the second story, Husk, at least I understood. It was a monster story. This family that it was a debutante coming of age story. But it turns out they adopted this girl, and they didn't know she's going to turn into a monster in her debutante. It was pretty straightforward. There was no twist ending. You knew exactly kind of what was coming, but it was pretty well done.
Right.
2 stories do not an anthology. I think you need at least 3 stories for an anthology.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
But it'll be coming out in one trade paperback volume if you're interested. If anybody's interested in getting it. But nice, fun classic comic book cover with a cobweb covered spinner rack. Unspeakable Comics. Shocking. Gah, who did this cover? They've all had good covers in EC tradition. Chris Burnham and Adriana Lucas. I think this one is cover A, right? Yeah. So good stuff.
I'm trying to think if I have anything. Oh, the only thing I have of a compilation of EC stuff is I have a Bernie Wrightson book on my shelf. That's maybe some was creepy stuff. What was he most known for when he was at EC?
Oh, you have the Bernie Wrightson EC book?
I believe that's what it is. Let me look.
Yeah, because they did. I forget. Was it Fantagraphics? It's weird because it's like that EC stuff is licensed to a couple different publishers.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Fantagraphics who was publishing the collections of artists. Like you could get a Bernie Wrightson collection of. Well, he'd be creepy, not EC, right? He'd be creepy.
Oh yeah, and so for some reason I was thinking Creepy was put out by EC, but that's not. It was a
Eerie and Creepy were almost an extension of EC after EC stopped publishing, because in the early '60s issues of Creepy and Eerie, it was a lot of the EC guys.
Is that Warren Publishing, or is that?
Yeah, that was Warren.
Okay. I don't know how I came up with that. And did they put out the Vampirella stuff, or is that? Yeah.
Yeah, that was Warren too, right?
Yeah.
But that was
Warren. Vampirella was Warren. That was a bit later.
Yeah, it was like the late '60s or maybe even early '70s.
Late '60s, and even before Creepy and Eerie, they already had some stories in Famous Monsters of Filmland, because it was not a comic magazine, but it had comics inside.
But the height of like magazine distribution, my understanding was like the '70s were like the golden age of magazine. Like there'd be newsstands where that went through maybe the '90s, but I'm talking.
The '70s is when it declined.
Oh, really?
For comics, at least.
No, I'm talking about magazines.
Okay,
actually,
magazines. Yeah,
like
maybe.
In terms of like niche magazines for everything, and the circulation was huge. Like your height of circulation for your Rolling Stones and Playboys and even Times and Newsweek and all that stuff. But so what came to mind though is like if you go to newsstand. Would there be? I don't know. There was those Marvel black and white magazines, right?
Right.
And then Savage Sword of Conan. Was it Savage Sword? Or, no,
Savage Sword of Conan.
Yeah, Savage Sword. Yeah. And then Creepy and maybe Fangoria and Starlog and all that. All that stuff. I only started getting into buying back issue magazines like that kind of stuff like in recent years because I had this strange resistance. It was not in comic size. Dimensions, it's like but like I got over that because I love this stuff so much. But yeah, I want to go back and buy some. I mean, the Savage Sword that was original content or was that repurposed?
Yeah,
content?
That's all original content.
Buscema, right?
And it was Buscema and a lot of the Filipino guys inking them. And it was more adult too. There was nudity in Savage Sword.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Or at least female toplessness. I mean, Conan was always naked, but the loincloth. So. I
have that book, The Marvel Art of Conan.
Oh, yeah? How was that?
Cover was Barry Windsor Smith, and then probably a bunch of Coluda and Vest kind of. I'm trying to think who. When the only issues I bought, like new, I remember buying like Conan the King.
Oh yeah,
a couple issues that new, and it lasted. I think the last issue was maybe 21, 24, something like that. It was bi-monthly, maybe that book.
I bought that one all off the stands.
Great covers.
Some really nice. Mike Coluda did some nice covers.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. I think that's what
Started out as King Conan and then switched over to Conan the King.
I had his when we're talking about the DC graphic novels. So DC put out Shadow. Was the Shadow made Hollywood something? I forget what the name of it was. That's Coluda. I mean, that was the first time I'd ever seen Coluda on that was the first time I bought a Shadow anything. I think.
Didn't Coluda do the Shadow in the 70s?
Yeah. So I didn't realize it was a big deal.
Yeah, he did a comic series.
What was that?
For DC.
I believe he did the comic series at DC.
Yeah, for DC in the 70s. And he said he came back to it?
Well, it was a hardcover graphic novel. Like it was like the Shadow 1941 or something like that. It has like I could see it in my head. It came
Who
out
got
like 87,
Conan
88.
for Marvel? Wasn't that Roy Thomas? Did he get Conan
Probably.
for Marvel originally?
Roy Thomas convinced Martin Goodman to license Conan.
Okay.
Although we didn't, I have an alter ego modern version where he explains that he didn't think that Goodman would go for it, and he had proposed another barbarian. What was his name?
Oh, Cull, not Cull.
Not Cull, not a Howard character. It was published later in one of the horror anthologies.
Oh, that's right. They made a $1 comic of it recently. I think who was the Conan tryout. They call it, right?
No, that was Plan C. Stardust Slayer was Plan C. But there was another one. Thongor of Lemuria.
Oh, Thongor that's the one that's in. I have all the issues of it in like Marvel Premiere or something.
Mm-hmm.
That John Remy. That was one I bought. Like I would occasionally, like in the 90s, I would occasionally buy some back issues. Just one day I'd wander to my local comic shop and look for some back issues. And I think I got like the complete Thongor run from whatever it was, Marvel Premiere. I can't even remember. It was like from 16 to 24 or something. A lot of good John Romita covers for like $1 a piece. And the only reason I bought them was because they had all the cool covers on them.
I'm assuming Conan did well for Marvel for
a
stretch, and probably was probably a lot of international translations of it.
Mm-hmm. There are Conan was something that could be sold to people who didn't like American superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So it was in some places it was probably going to sell better than licensing out Spider-Man or the Fantastic Four.
In 1990-ish, when they wanted to give it a real shot in the arm, they had this sequence of covers by like they had like a McFarlane cover, they had a Jim Lee cover, they had a Portascio cover, they had Art Adams cover. I remember when I was selling comics, those did really well. I mean, it wasn't like they were $20, but I'm like you could flip those for $3, $4, $5.
Remember when early 90s, I think it was Conan the Adventurer came out. They were trying to revive it, so they gave it a new #1 with Conan the Adventurer. And who was the artist? Raphael Kianan?
I remember that name. Yeah, he made Conan look very.
Lots of little noodling. He was pretty good. Lots of little noodling in there.
This sounds really familiar. Yeah, the Conan had the same deal as with the tail end of the run of Marvel's Star Wars or Marvel's G.I. Joe or Marvel's Conan. There was such low print runs relatively to everything else that they're pretty pricey. There's the last issue or two of Marvel Star Wars, G.I. Joe,
they have collected the Savage Tales and other Conan into collected oversized omnibus now. I haven't seen the printing on those ones because I remember looking at the printing on when Dark Horse had the Conan license, and they were reprinting the Savage Swords. Yeah, the art was sweet on that 90s run. Hard to get. Yeah. That was some good stuff. I think Raphael Kianan was the guy's name, I think. But like the Dark Horse put some of those Savage Swords into an omnibus, but they shrank them down to comic size. I think I remember not liking the printing on them. The printing looked a little too muddy for me. Ooh, look at that! What do you got? Oh, that. Hold that up again, Darren. Let's see. Is that one of the omnibuses? That's the
Barry Windsor Smith art.
Oh, that's the art of Conan. Okay, Marvel art of Conan. Very cool.
I only had a few issues of it new. There was one of the sequences which always struck me. It's in this book. It's Conan falls down into some dungeon pit and into what he thinks is there's a lake. But it's actually the giant eye of like a monster. He actually swims the eye and gets to the pupil as if it's like a little dock in the middle of this lake or pond, and then but I just thought it was so odd, cool that he could like swim in an eye, but like but it's actually in this book, but it's look at it now, it has a lot of Shema stuff that I'm looking at.
Have you seen the I don't remember who put it out. It's when artist editions first started coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Someone put out a not an artist edition, but the same thing by a different company of Red Nails. The Barry Windsor Smith Conan story from what was that? Conan 23 or 24 or something around there. And I remember my friend Ed got it. Oh, let's see. Hold on. Let's see him swimming.
Okay. There you go.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
There's the giant eye. He's swimming in like it's a pool.
It might have been in Conan the King. I'm sorry to interrupt, but like I'm like into the book again. But like
That's okay.
I just the one I was going to mention, it's in here. The cover is that
I just want to say how like I think Steve Bunch either he looked through it or he got it, but both of them were disappointed in the Conan not artist edition, but the off-brand artist edition of Red Nails,
right?
Because the paper they printed it on glossy paper, which they didn't like, and they only printed on one side of the paper to pad out the size of the book. So the left side of the book had no page printed on it, and the right side did. So there weren't side-by-side pages like a comic book.
There's that What If issue. What if Conan? It's a great Sienkiewicz cover.
Oh yes.
What if Conan was like in modern day New York, basically?
Right.
Somehow he gets like transported into. I wonder if this is that.
62 Leslie has a copy of Conan the Adventurer 2, the interior of a Conan classic. Talk about a total screw up.
This is what you're talking about, right? This is Conan the Adventurer.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
That up again. Let me see that.
This guy really phoned it in on this 2-page spread, I'll tell you.
That's Raphael.
Is he Spanish artist or Portuguese?
I don't know.
It's most likely Filipino.
Yeah.
With that name.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Jared, and they reprinted Conan 1 to 10 or more as Conan Classics. Okay.
See, I always felt that, Conan must have did really well for Marvel, mainly because whenever you saw Marvel ads that had stuff in it, Conan was always added.
Yeah.
The
70s and
when they would be merchandising, Conan would be a part of that merchandising. So Marvel had sold or licensed to a company to make coins. So it was Spider-Man, it was Conan, and it was the Hulk. And these coins, I think they were like brass kind of coins made, and those were the characters that they would choose. And in my studio, I have hanging up is a uncut sheet of those stickers that was put out by, I think, Heroes World, or whatever Heroes World was before it was, fully Heroes World. So they had put out stickers that you would get, and the main characters, you always got stickers, always had Spider-Man, Captain America, and the Hulk, and there is also a Conan with it as well. So
there's like, Amigo Conan doll too.
There's Amigo
you read my mind.
Yeah,
it's popular enough for them to do that.
Yep, and it was always part of that kind of. Every time you saw a group of the superheroes in a house ad, Conan would be there, part of it. And it was a Marvel book at that time. He was a Marvel character. In my mind, I always thought that the Conan movie was a Marvel movie.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Who wants to go back in time to the 1940s?
Well, this here is interesting about Raphael Kayanan. He's been working on TV and movies, but not just as a concept artist. He actually trains the actors on martial arts.
Oh, wow. And I just noticed in this one, the last one, Tip Top, I think that's Nancy in there, and that's her Aunt Fritz, right?
Yeah. I believe so. That's definitely Nancy.
Yeah. So we've got Humdinger number 4, Willie Comics number 5, and Tip Top Comics 124. Wow, that's a lot of issues at Tip Top Comics.
Yeah,
1946 September. I don't know any of these. Well,
I've heard of Willie. I've
Yeah.
seen covers before Willie. Humdinger, never heard of. And Tip Top, no, but I recognize those characters.
yeah, but wow, isn't it amazing that there was a comic that went 124 issues at least, and
At least.
don't know it?
Yeah, that thing started in the 30s.
Graphic Man says Tip Top is worth getting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's because he just likes sexy Aunt Fritz. That's what that is.
That was going to be my slab for that reason.
That's not a Bushmiller cover.
No.
Yeah,
I don't
couldn't even tell you who.
Yeah, I don't think the syndicated guys did many of the comics covers. What was that, Ray Wilson?
Like, I wouldn't even know names for any of these, artist-wise.
No.
Willie might have been Mike Sikowski.
Sorry?
Willie might have, the cover at least might be Mike Sikowski, because he was the main artist for the humor comics at Timely in the second half of the 40s.
I like that Humdinger logo.
It's an interesting logo. It's like I would want to read all of the books because no idea what any of them is about.
Later, Tip Top would have Snoopy and Charlie Brown. Wow, they lasted a while.
Oh, Willie was one of those Archie clones that Martin Goodman tried to put out.
Yeah.
The thing is, the comics with the female characters sold better than the ones with the male characters when it comes to teen humor.
62 Lefty Blues is going to slab Tip Top, read Humdinger, rip Willie, and dolphin Nancy's doll. So she'll be holding a doll.
I agree across the board. That would be my picks too.
I'm gonna read Humdinger just to find out what it is.
Right.
I'm gonna rip Willie, and I'm gonna slap Tip Top.
Seems there's a consensus here.
I think I'm gonna slab Humdinger because I like that cover best.
I like that logo. What do you think Willie is? Is Willie like a college humor kind of thing? Is that what it looks like? It's like
it's Archie. It's a rip-off of Archie book, so it would be.
I'm gonna doll the cheerleader that Willie's looking at.
Following the grand tradition of the French and not having sexy women on the cover, he's turning into a dolphin.
Yes, we've meant to make that comic palatable for the French market.
Let's see. What was that?
As much as I want to read Tip Top, because I do, but I think that would be the one I would slab. That would be the one I would want to protect. I have no interest in Willie, so I think that's the one that's going to be ripped up. And read Humdinger, and I will replace one of the horses with the dolphin in Humdinger, or maybe replace the dog that's chasing it at the lower left-hand side.
Oh yeah,
that is the dog.
Yeah, the dolphin can be swimming around the carousel.
Yep.
I'm assuming all these scans of the interiors are crowdsourced, unless whoever runs the site just has like a giant archive of these kind of
right.
books.
They're crowdsourced.
Yeah. Wow, what a great resource! I go in there I'm sure it's a rabbit.
Yeah, I'm going to need to go. I'm going to need to visit it and read some of these things because it's amazing to know that ran 124 issues.
Yeah.
Do you think it was a lot of reprints, maybe of comic strips, or just maybe?
Looks like it. Some of those early comics, they mostly lived off of reprinting comic strips.
Right.
Let's see what Mind the Comics is going to do. He's going to slab Willie, read Humdinger, rip Tip Top. Dolphin is the football ball. You know what? I'm going to do the same thing as him. I'm going to slab Humdinger, read Willie, and just because I want to rip up a Nancy comic, I'm going to rip up Tip Top.
The cover on that the cover art on Tip Top, I can just imagine that as a cover on a prog rock concept album.
And you know what I'm going to change to Dolphin? See those hearts coming out of Willie? It's going to look like he's got dolphins coming out of his chest because I'm going to make those hearts into dolphins. Humdinger. That Humdinger logo is good.
The Humdinger
I
logo
really
is
like
good,
it.
and the art, even though it's so busy, it's fascinating. Like, you just want to really look into it.
That's some nice art.
And the trade dress almost reminds me of like 60s stuff.
Wow. Who's the company?
You know, when Archie was doing those pop art stuff. You know, that's what it reminds me. So I almost wanted to rip Humdinger because it looked too modern out of the set, but that one is so different compared to the other ones. Like if you had put these up and say what ages are these from, I would have thought Humdinger was from the 70s.
Wow, yeah. That logo is terrific, I gotta say.
There are only 8 issues of Humdinger.
Okay, logos, I love the logo. It's great.
What's Novelty Press?
Can I ask you about when you said Dolphin? What came to mind is the DC Comics character Dolphin.
Yes.
Yes.
And the original appearance. I just looked it up. 1968. It's that greenish kind of cover. Now that I know that's a kind of a sought after issue. Is there something controversial about it, or is it just because
she was supposed to be in a movie or something?
Is that what happened? It became a spec book because she was going to be in a... Okay.
I think that was... I remember it was like 5 years ago. Everybody was collecting it.
That solved the mystery for me because maybe she was supposed to show up. I don't know.
I think she was supposed to show up in some sort of... Because all of a sudden it made the rounds everywhere.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because these... how spec books work when there's so much...
I actually did a sort of recreation of that cover where I took it and I redrew it, and I made her one of my painted ladies. So I drew tattoos all over Dolphin.
Right. The other thing I was going to mention, you talked about the color yellow earlier, right?
Right.
So when the Valiant first came out, 90, 91-ish, okay?
Yep.
I remember I didn't have a lot of those books, but I remember looking through them, and like there was 2 things that struck me about the color, which I did not like in those books. It just didn't appeal to me. Right. But I've heard this elsewhere too. Number one is the color looked like it's markers, like this streaky, unless it was dyes, but an overwhelming usage of the color yellow. I don't know if Jim Shooter was like dictating, like, did they buy extra yellow, or that was his taste, or there's some art direction going on, but there was something about it that was just eyeball retina burning, kind of like garish, like it was overwhelming. And like I love good color in comics, and I usually don't nothing usually bugs me.
Right.
In terms of, artistic choices with color. But this, I was just like, there's something going on where I'm like, what's going on? This is so...
I never liked their coloring technique.
For Valiant?
For Valiant. It just didn't appeal to me that... Because it was full color. They shot it right from the color guides.
That's why I look like Marker, because it was color guides.
Yeah, so basically they would... the inks would come in. They would make a copy of them. They was usually, I completely forget the name of the paper that we used to use. It was a thicker paper, but it was kind of like copy paper, but it was for the color guys. So it was just a little thicker. And I do not know if they shrunk those pages like they did at Marvel.
Yeah, they shrunk them down.
They did. So they would shrink the paper and then fully color on it. So the lettering is already on it. And so you're, technically one generation away from the original pen and inks, but that's not that big a deal. And then they were painted, and it had to be a thicker paper because any kind of paint, because I don't know if they were using the Doc Martin inks or if they were using watercolors, or it could have been mixed media, and they were painting right on it. And as Jared mentioned, they would shoot right from that page.
I'm glad you guys know all this because you're leaving a mystery, because it always looked to me like it was Marker, but I know often I like Marker look, but this was unappealing Marker to me.
I think and actually I have this trade paperback that looks less watercolory than I remember, but it's still different, kind of. It still looks different in a way, but this hardly bothers me at all looking at it now. But at the time,
I'm almost sure you could achieve that look, that similar look, if it wasn't markers, they could achieve that look with the Doc Martens inks.
It was Doc Martens. I was actually over there watching them once or twice.
Okay.
There might have been a specific book. In fact, I know there was, unless I'm thinking of Warriors of Plasm when Shooter went over and started Defiant. But there was some book where I think the characters were basically yellowish, and maybe that's why I was just like out of control how much.
There's some yellow for you.
Yeah, that's the end. There you go.
Here are some yellow explosions.
I'm sure. Well, there you go. I'm sure I have some selective memory on this, but it was enough for me to like kind of remember.
There's some green in you, but know what it is? I was actually over there a couple of nights visiting because at one point. Oh, by the way, this one is signed by Jim Shooter, 1639 out of 2000. I didn't even know that. I just picked this up out of the discount bin.
Right.
15 years ago at my LCS. I was like, you know what? I've never read any of these.
Actually, Wilson, now that you mentioned that was shot from the actual color guides. You know what other books look like that? It remembers the Milestone books in the early days.
Oh, yeah. I think they may have used that.
Yeah, they may have used that technique as well.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a couple of times, sometime in the early 90s when Valiant was really expanding, they were looking for people to color the stuff, and it was in-house after hours kind of thing. So like my friend Ed, he did that for, I don't know, a month or two. I think I don't even know if he did, but that's how I got to see their coloring. Was I went over with Ed a couple nights just to check the place out and see what he was doing. After working at Marvel, we went over to Valiant, which was downtown a little bit more, and there was a skeleton crew in there coloring.
FIT.
It was near FIT?
It was across the street from FIT, if I remember correctly.
It was across town. It wasn't really downtown then.
Yeah.
Okay. Because FIT is on 27th. I
mean, they were a hot company for a moment in time. Yeah. They the first book was like that Super Mario Brothers. There was they had a license, but it was like a Nintendo book was like the first book, and then years ago, okay, Valiant, whatever. But then they introduced all this either original properties or more Solar and stuff they licensed, like in Turok and what's the other one? Who am I thinking of? Magnus.
There was like those were the Gold Key books, and then they had their own original characters from like Harbinger and stuff like that, Exo Man of War, and then kind of merged those older groups with the newer groups together to create that Valiant universe itself.
And they were hot for like a year or two, and then I think there was a bunch of infighting there that maybe contributed to them, or it will also, with the speculator boom and bust, and everyone slid.
JJ did a lot of their colorings. I don't know if they did all of them.
The colorists are listed as Janet Jackson, Maria Bakari, and Nob Rowe. I assume Nob Rowe was all those people after hours coloring stuff when they were just trying to get stuff done. But I didn't even realize at the time, because I never knew. David Lapham is the penciler on Harbinger. Mm-hmm. I didn't really notice David Lapham until Stray Bullets. So I had no idea he came out of Valiant because I didn't read any Valiant. But this whole book is penciled by David Lapham.
That hardly looks like Lapham, right?
The layouts look like Lapham, but otherwise it hardly looks like Lapham. I mean, not really. It looks like generic superhero, but it's actually the storytelling is good. I remember when I finally read this, I was like, "Wow, I can understand why this was popular." It was. I
did enjoy all the Valiant books. Yeah, all the Valiant books that I read, and I've read a lot of them. I really did enjoy them. I didn't like how pricey that they were, and they got very pricey real quick.
Right.
And for no reason, but they just did. I still got a bunch of Turoks. If anyone wants to buy some Turoks that are what were they? The chromium covers?
Oh, the Bart Sears. Yeah, that was everywhere. Yeah. But
Lapham was real young there. He had to be.
Yeah, if the storytelling was good, I'll give Shooter credit for because remember he was just a stickler for just clear, very clear storytelling, very conventional. But you guys let me know so my criticism of the coloring, which is probably also selective memory, right? Mm-hmm. Is we have back. I don't know if it's true today, but back then, whether it was Marvel or Valiant, is there art direction going on by someone like above the color is saying this is how I'd like it to look, or they just kind of like let them do their thing and
At
like
Valiant, there was.
okay, so there might be something to that
because
then.
they were looking for a certain look. They were doing like at Marvel, it was whatever editorial wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But at Valiant, I think they were looking for because they were art directing those colorists who were there after hours. So I assume they were art directing.
Perhaps someone's taste didn't jive with mine with it. But
they were really going for a house style across those books, and
which is why they chose that method of coloring. I think
Right.
too, to separate themselves. Characters were definitely yellow and plasm. I did not read any plasm.
I don't think
they receive endless hate to this day, but I love those early Valiant books. See, I don't know how much I never see him receive much hate. I mean, to this day, I mean, I don't hear anybody talk too much about him. But
early on, a Wizard, or it's one of the publications named them like publisher of the year. This is there in the year of Image too, like so right. For whatever reason. But there was a year or two in there after high school, but before I entered Marvel, it's like a year or two there where I was sort of out of it. Like I had some, in the comics, like I had some knowledge of what was going on, it was when I was home in Valiant was at their quick, kind of ascent and then descent. Because by the time I got back into comics when I was interning at Marvel, that was when you're getting into almost Deathmate territory, right? When which a lot of people pointed Deathmate and Death of Superman and a couple other things for the Crash. But those are the two big books everyone points to. It was Crash no matter what. Those are the two books that people point to: Deathmate and
I
Death
think it
of
was
Superman.
Just Valiant really crashed and burned after Shooter left. He was kind of the guiding hand there, and the business people took over after him. And
and that's what it was. Is that you had the business people poking in and saying this and that, and it's like, if you let Shooter do his thing, which was create comics, you had some great comics coming out of there.
Their thing was to expand and make even more money from the comics. Comics be what the comics actually were. They didn't care.
Right.
Yeah.
Why
panels and columns loved Janet Jackson's approach to color.
Can you name some of the things she was coloring at Marvel? Was probably everything, but Janet Jackson. I mean, or name because made for Marvel Age, right? But
she was dating Shooter that too, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's something I would never.
I do not know.
I think she was Shooter's girlfriend in the grand tradition of editors' girlfriends coloring comics. I believe she was, but I don't remember. I have that memory. Who knows if that memory is reliable or not?
Right. So Shooter had some, falling out with the Valiant management or Barry Windsor Smith, where it was. So then he goes and he starts Defiant, right? And that Plasma is mentioned, which had a card set, which became like the first issue or all that stuff. But remember, so it was Warriors or Plasma. Remember Marvel, who had just wanted to destroy the sky. I'm as that's why I gather from all the information. Why else would they do this? So they said it infringed on the character Plasma, which then Marvel put out Plasma book just to show that they're reaching.
They were being bullies.
Yeah, they're reaching. Yeah, but it was enough for them to have an overwhelming lawsuit, which would have been too expensive to fight. So that killed Defiant real quick, but.
And Lapham was Shooter's guy too. I think that's why he brought him to.
See, when I started reading comics in the '80s, Shooter you'd see his name, like he wrote the bullpen bulletins, stuff, and you'd see his name, blah blah. So I always knew Jim Shooter. So you get to, I guess, 87, 88, somewhere in there, and I was at that point I was not reading like the trades, if you will, like Comic Buyer's Guide, which covered the business and behind the scenes of comics. So all of a sudden, I'd seen bullpen bulletins, welcome our new editor-in-chief, Tom DeFalco. And I was like, what? What? This is, me being like a preteen or a tween or teenager, not knowing the business world and that people and leave jobs and get let go from jobs and there's politics and all that stuff. So I actually probably didn't even know much about it until 20 years later when I was working in the
I was told when I was at Marvel, the reason he got fired was because he went over his boss's head. He broke I don't know if that was the straw that broke the camel's back Because I wouldn't think a one incident like that would, but he had some conflict with his boss, something. So he went to his boss's boss, and his boss is out somewhere. His boss's boss went no,
Yeah,
and it got him fired. Before his boss fired him for breaking the chain of command.
And it's like anything else in the world might be a confluence, not just one thing, but confluence.
Yeah,
of
yeah,
events
that may have been the straw that broke the camel.
Yeah, right. I mean, that book, Marvel Comics: The Untold Story, which I've been like, I know some people told me like this is not exactly what happened, the parts of it, and like but also people, two sides of every story, whatever. But it sounded like in that book, he was just becoming too overbearing to the staff, and it sounded like there was a moment where it became like the townspeople with the pitchforks and the torches like stormed his office. This is like recounted in the book, and like basically, and somehow that got back to the owners too. So it could be a combination of all the stuff that
I found John Byrne's take on.
Oh, he didn't like him, right?
No, he does. He doesn't not like. He doesn't. Yeah. No, but he was saying that he was comparing Paul Levitz and Jim Shooter. Paul Levitz, very well respected. He said Paul Levitz is really, really good at running the day-to-day operation of a successful company. Jim Shooter was really, really good about taking a company that was going in a bad direction and failing and revitalizing it and putting it in the right direction.
Sure.
He was like, I always thought that they should switch jobs every 6 years or something like that, where Jim Shooter could shake up the company, and because I think that from the complaints I've heard about Jim Shooter, when he first came into Marvel, he had to clean up a lot of messes.
And that's all in the book too. Yeah.
He had to clean up a lot of messes. He cleaned up everything. He got things going in the right direction. But once things were going in the right direction, he couldn't help but mess with it.
He got too tyrannical.
He couldn't help but stick his nose in a well-oiled machine that he made.
Right.
To tinker with it in ways that it shouldn't have been tinkered, that upset the people who were doing the books.
Right. So
I think that's what people complain about with him.
But hey, listen, to give him a lot of credit, like he introduced, much more favorable royalty structures and
he cleaned up a lot of messes. He really did.
How old was he when he got that job? Was he like his late 20s, maybe?
I don't even know.
Because he was a Wonderkin, right? He started
but he had gotten out of comics by 18. He went to work. He went to work in advertising. Then he was back around 1974. So he was 24 at the time.
Because he was like 16 in the mid 60s when he first, or even 14 when he got writing work.
He got the job at 13, and the first story was published when he was 14.
When did he get the editor-in-chief job? Was it like 78, 79, somewhere in there?
78.
Yeah, 78.
And before that, there was a succession. It wasn't like Roy Thomas and some other ones like of editors-in-chiefs. Like a lot in a short period of time.
Thomas Wolfman.
Was Wine one of them?
Thomas Wolfman Wien. Conway for about 3 months, and then Goodwin for a year and a half.
I would guess in the late 70s when he was getting there, the book that was bringing in the most money was Star Wars. It'd have to be,
Shooter credit says that getting Star Wars was Roy Thomas's idea, and that's what saved Marvel.
Wow, it's I guess you could find pictures. I mean, I know I've seen a couple of like San Diego Comic-Con 76. When Lucas had a table there, just like, with some kind of preview art or giveaways or posters of this thing called Star Wars that we're working on or coming out. But hey,
Janet Jackson was in good company among other notable wife-girlfriend colorists. Yeah, Lynn Varney, Richmond Lewis.
Dana Graziano. What Jim Starlin's wife, what was she called? Dana?
I don't know.
Possibly
there was a few in the 70s, though. Linda Fight was Herb Trimpe's wife, but she wrote, I think.
Was Julia Lacquemont? I'm probably getting the name wrong. She was the painter, colorist in Mike Grell's Longbow Hunters. I thought they were, maybe not, but I just kind of thought she was kind of like the Lynn Varley of Mike Grell.
14 years old, writing Legion. Damn.
Yeah. And he sent in samples.
No, you can tell. I always say this to everybody.
Yeah.
First issue that shooter writes, because he sent the stick figures so they could understand what the story was about, and they do they use his layouts, and you notice, man, this is not a DC comic.
Right.
It looks good, but then after 2 stories, Kurt Swan just he stops sending layouts. Kurt Swan just goes back to being Kurt Swan, and here we are, boring DC again. Of course, Shooter used to go into the office at DC after, and he gave them ideas, and he didn't care what he thought about publishing. Although they were trying to teach him stuff.
But so Shooter loved the offbeat kind of Marvel stuff from the 60s, and and that's the kind of sensibility he was bringing to DC. That's that was okay.
Yeah, because the splash page, which at DC was usually something that explained what the story was. Well, at Marvel, Stan was already telling the people to draw. Okay, let's start with action. It's the first page you turn. Oh, action. And while the Shooter story doesn't have action, it starts with the Legion tryouts, with the new members that he created, and they're seen from behind, and you're with them, looking up at the main members who are looking you over, and then they're all introduced, and of course one of them is Karate Kid, and he has physical abilities. One thing that Shooter complained of, everybody had point and shoot powers, and Karate Kid moved, and that in itself probably made Kurt Swan. What am I drawing here?
Say, speaking of who's sleeping with whom, learned from a Milgram interview that Neil Adams was dating Jeanette Kahn and told her to hire Milgram as an editor. And he wonders how much Adams was the power behind the throne in 70s DC. Good question. I don't know. I'm sure he was I think he was probably influential just in that he was respected, but I'm sure also a lot of editors resented him. Because especially those DC editors were used to being a power unto themselves.
Yeah, but when Neil comes back after being at Marvel, that's also when Carmine Infantino takes over. So it makes more sense to have Neil Adams giving out ideas because now you have an artist as editor-in-chief.
Right. But Jeanette Kahn came on after Carmen left, right?
Right, but she was never editor. She was
publisher.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And Levitz doesn't start editing until Carmine leaves, I think. Or was Dick Giordano editor first?
Most of those ladies were excellent colorists, no matter who they dated. Right. Yeah.
Let's not discount the talent, the ability.
Dave Stewart must be a hell of a swinger. Yeah, there's a lot more colorists now. A lot more male colorists. Yeah. It used to be one of those things, one of those societal things where people in comics thought women were better at color with men because they had to pick clothes and makeup. That's why there were so many women colorists. That was seen as a woman's job kind of thing.
Also, all the colorists at Disney who were coloring in themselves, they were all women.
Yeah.
So I think it might have
been from there. I'm trying to think of the women pencilers back in, like June Brigham comes to mind.
There weren't a lot.
She drew Power. I don't know how long she drew a Power Pack for. Wasn't it that long? Maybe, I don't know, but very clean. Like, I liked her stuff a lot. It was very clean, precise. Trying to,
another comic I got this week, Junkyard Joe #4 of 6, continues to be good. Much better than Geiger. And this is the best Gary Frank artwork I've seen. Gary Frank's art drawing with expression. It's kind of like, whoa. he's usually a lot of I would describe a lot of the characters that Gary Frank has drawn over his career as stoic. Not in Junkyard Joe. He's really getting into some expressions on stuff here.
That's another Image book?
Yeah, another Image book.
How many books? I mean, I can go on previews. I guess. How many books does Image put out a month? It's probably, I understand, probably fluctuates quite a bit month to month, but like, is it like dozens?
I would guess there's 10 new Image books a month.
Well, I mean, in total.
I mean, a week. Pardon me. So that'd make 40 a month.
It sounds.
I would guess.
Sounds like what I would guess, yeah. Including like what I'll call legacy stuff, like a Spawn book or a Savage Dragon, and
just going by my final order cutoff, I would think somewhere around 10 a week.
What's your resource right now for weekly comics? You know what's coming out? Is it like it's not Previews World anymore because
well, what I read, I get Comic Shop Weekly. Which just is under new management, and it's more wizard like. I'm not. There doesn't seem to be enough. You
mean Comic Shop News? That like is that or is it something else?
Yeah, that's it. The Comic Shop News. That's it, right? The weekly one that comes to the comic shop.
Yeah, I just want I'm curious to see again like a list of like everything comes out. Solicitations is what I'm looking at.
I'm lucky that my comic shop I get an email from every week of final order cutoff. So it's a list, an email list with links of every final order cutoff is usually like Sunday nights for DC and Monday nights for everyone else.
What website you going to for this, or what you're on an email?
No, this is from my local comic.
Oh, they. But
you can also look it up on web. Just put in final order cutoff.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be on top of it, so I gotta get into this again.
But I can click on a link and it'll show. If I'm like, oh, what's that comic? Click on a link and it'll show me a little preview image and description. And I can either add just that issue or the series to my pull list.
Right.
So I look at that every week. That's my best resource. Is just my local comic shop sending me out that email.
I got to make a trip to since I'm in the city. I make a trip to Midtown.
Yeah.
And just kind of like scan the racks.
Cavern and Mary Wilshire, a couple of female. And Barbara Slate barely counts, but I love her stuff. There we go.
Was Marie Severin still drawing at the time? I don't remember.
Yeah, she was drawing up and
she did a little bit of everything.
I don't think she was drawing in the 90s at all, but she was at a lot of Comic Cons.
Yeah, but there weren't many female artists at the time. There was a name that she didn't do much, I guess. Tom Artist.
Who?
Tom Artist. Thomasina Artist.
I don't know him or her.
Her. Yeah. But there were more writers at Marvel at the time.
What year was that?
Tom Hardy's never did much. I remember something that she did for Cloak and Dagger Marvel Fanfare Story.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't recognize the name at all.
Mm-hmm. But there were more artists, more writers. There were Wheezy and the Sandy, Joe Duffy.
And in the 90s, there were hardly any female artists at Marvel, I don't think. If they were, they made them draw Barbie, like Amanda Connor.
Right. Can I bring up Peach Momoko? Is it Momoko or Momoko?
Yeah, that's
Momoko. Is she primarily a cover artist? Like she's she's
doing some inside stuff too. I just saw
primarily she's a cover artist.
But she also does inside. The matter of fact, it's in. Let me get my comic shop.
Was she huge in Japan and then just kind of she has a huge following, right? She just
I'm not sure because there's all that parallel market in Japan that doesn't exist in the United States, so you can get famous doing that.
Right. A lot of like just Copic kind of sketchy stuff.
Yes.
Who's the artist on Monstrous?
Oh, that's
I really like this.
I have the latest issue here.
The writer's Marjorie Liu, right?
Sana Takeda. Latest issue of Monstrous, always good. Issue 42 we're up to.
Wow. Is that the same artist since the start?
Yep.
It's a beautiful book. I think it is
beautiful. And they also just did. They did an original graphic novel this year called The Night Eaters.
Is it related to it, or is it?
Nope, unrelated horror, good stuff.
I got to.
I enjoyed this one, hardcover one. Abrams Books.
I really like what I've seen in Monsters. I should pick up like the first collection or something for myself.
But I know Sana Takeda is Japanese, but has she made Japanese comics? Because if I don't understand, she's been doing Monstrous for ages now. And I'm pretty sure she's from Japan, Japanese, because I have seen I've seen pictures of her with like her translator at a con or something like that.
Sana Takeda?
Yes, Sana Takeda.
I'm on Amazon now. I think they keep that first trade is still. I mean, I don't know if it's still the same print run, but they keep that at that $10. Like,
Image does that with introductory trade.
What a great price points to get for sure. But go ahead. I'm sorry. So you don't know.
But I'm always like, I can't imagine if you're a popular Japanese manga artist that you could make more money in the USA.
Right. Yeah.
Nowadays you can't.
So I'm like, why would she be doing Monstrous for 42? I'm like, if she's a popular Japanese artist, shouldn't she be making tons of money in Japan?
Maybe she's not fast enough.
Yeah, maybe. I just don't know.
Well, Jared, you remember the second time I was at Marvel, the 0405, that was when they were doing that push. They were putting out those digests.
Okay.
Which were the production value. They were beautiful little books, right? But that was like the big push to try to get like that manga rack space, like in your Barnes and Nobles and stuff, like that familiar kind of format. Because, I mean, Powell probably know. I mean, like the manga sells in the U.S. and worldwide. I'm talking outside Japan. Like, it does really well. Just like that pocket-sized serialization of it, and it's inexpensive because it's black and white.
Here we go. Demon Days Down in Flames, #1 by Peach Momoko. Things are heating up in Momoka's Marvel universe. So this is one of her.
Is she doing interiors?
Yeah, I think so. Peach Momoko is one of the hottest creators in the comic scene, and she skillfully weaves Marvel characters we know into Japanese folklore. So this is coming out soon.
Let me see.
I guess she's doing interiors.
I should think the Monsters, they put out hardcover collections too. Yeah.
A good book. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I've been buying it for 42 issues, so I must like it.
When it first came out, did it just catch your eye because it's a really good looking book, or did you hear about like some buzz like leading up to it being released?
Monstrous?
Yeah.
No, I didn't hear any buzz. I just
saw it on the rack and said, I'm buying it. Yeah.
Scott Edelman's wife, Irene Vartov, told me that in the 1970s Marvel editorial, the men were eventually asked to try scripting and the women coloring. Yeah, it was thought that women are better at coloring because they're good at colors, and men, it was a weird thing, you know. Peach Momoko did interiors for a Psylocke book a couple of years ago. Oh, okay. She's not nearly as popular in Japan. She recently did a Carvanos Kayfabe interview.
Yeah, her husband had to translate because she doesn't speak English.
Is that Peach Momoko or?
Yeah, Peach Momoko. Yeah,
Peach Momoko.
Peach Momoko's husband who is also her agent, was in there, so he could translate because Momoko doesn't speak English.
I feel like Peach Momoko has a big I see the kayfabe comment.
And we'll let kayfabe know that in case
I really like those guys. But I have a feeling that Peach Momoko has like a really big following if it's US with just like that kind of teenage Copic marker aspiring artist kind of crowd.
Yeah, could be.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know the rock band the Scorpions?
Sure.
Everybody hates them in Germany.
Maybe creator control at his image is better than at manga. Maybe it's It's a good question because, like I said,
Well, in
she's
manga,
doing the
they
whole
want you
book.
to.
This is Peach Momoka. She's doing the whole book. Marvel
Mhm.
said, "Do whatever you want." I don't laugh.
In manga, you have to produce. So if some
Yeah.
of the Japanese artists and this, they're not fast enough for what the Japanese publishers want. They might as well try something internationally.
Why not? Yeah. I just thought, all Japanese comic book artists were doing so much better financially than American ones that why would they come over? But I don't really know.
Maybe it's a real factory though. Like it just
could be. It's just
and
it could be I'm just hearing about the real successful ones. If
I'm trying hard to remember any European female artist, and I can't.
Yeah. Wow.
I really can't. But the only one I can name is Marianne Satrapi, who did Persepolis. And that's it. And that thing isn't even a typical European comic. She's an Iranian refugee. Her comic is about her life in Iran when the Ayatollahs took over.
I filled my water and I went from Paolo trying to remember a female European artist to the Ayatollah.
Because the only person working the only woman I can remember working in European comics as an artist is Marianne Satrapi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that just gave me a flashback to like when I was at Marvel in 05. I think that was when the Pope passed away. One of the Pope, and so remember how Marvel did that Pope comic? You know what I'm talking about?
I remember that comic. Yeah,
it was a one-shot
in the 80s,
probably early 80s. Yeah, and so
yeah.
Because I was on the marketing side, like I would people would find me like externally, like I'm doing an article for Newsweek, and we understand Marvel did a Pope comic, and so I would I could confirm that, because like oh god, it was like the life of Pope John Paul II or something like that. I'm just trying to think of the name of that.
That was the name of the book. I think it was a 2-issue series.
Well, I think you're right.
It was a one shot.
It was a one shot, and so
was it a one shot? Okay.
And they made it for maybe
there was the second book was about Saint Francis of Assisi.
Yep. I bought those off the stand.
Yeah.
What's
they also did the Easter art story with another one.
I am not sure what manga arts pay, but when I hear the sales numbers that they get, like One Piece, the latest volume sells 5 million copies.
Right, but
I got to figure even the base pay of someone who's nowhere near that has got to be better than.
If they have no participation in it, though, I mean, there's
I don't know.
A factory worker,
But I got to figure if you're working on a book that sells 500,000 copies in Japan, it's got to pay better than a book that sells 50,000 copies in the U.S., doesn't it? I don't know. European women have no talent. She's Iranian. Yeah. I find the most talented Portuguese comic artists right now are females. Okay, there's a lot of in comics in general, in indie comics. There's tons of women artists these days.
We have a few that if we try to launch them internationally, they probably do well.
Yeah.
Joana Afonso, Mozzie's good. She came to the monthly comics dinner once. She had already been published, but she was like 20, and she had a cute little comic that was actually a very interesting read. So we do have some, but from France, I never remember anyone. Even if the other name that I can actually remember was William Vance's wife. William Vance worked on a comic called Bruno Brazil, and his wife Petra, who is Spanish, she was his colorist.
Do you know this artist, Paolo? Rita?
I don't think I do.
Alfayat. There's no accent, so we don't pronounce them as extra syllables.
No.
Some of these,
no.
So was it the late 70s, early 80s? There was that wave of Filipino artists. Is that when it happened? Like that, there was So I remember, is it Jorge? No, he was Spanish. Jorge Zafino?
Jorge Zafino was Argentinian.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
He was really good.
But there was, who was in like the late 70s, or some of the Filipino artists that I'm thinking
Alfredo Alcala. So
yeah.
Argentina was the first, and Alfredo Alcala.
Mm-hmm.
The Redondo brothers.
Who's the guy I just saw who drew Skull the Slayer #1? When I was doing that video of the Marvel.
Steve Gann.
Steve Gann, that was it. I was like, I don't remember his name. And I was like, and I think it was Sleepy. He was like,
he did Star-Lord's first appearance.
Yeah. What was that?
He did Star-Lord's first appearance.
Oh, okay.
Written by Englehart.
But speaking of young artists, I had an interesting, I'm not going to call it a dream. I'm going to call it a moment in a dream this morning. First of all, I got to tell you, this is for anybody creative out there. One of the things as you are a creative getting older that you have to deal with is your own work and getting to like your own work. Because it happens with artists, especially young artists, that you see your own work and you can't stand to look at it because it's not good enough for you. That's just the way it works. And not every artist even. I've seen, like, I can remember Mark Teixeira in the 90s couldn't stand to look at his own work a lot. And I'm like, Mark, come on, you got to get over that. You're not 22. But I can remember, who is it? Louise Simonson. I was talking to about this once, and she had a good line for it. She said, you have to give that young guy a break. So when you're looking back at your art, like I said, some guys you just can't look at your old art anymore. It's just like, I can't, but you have to learn to give that young guy a break. That's the best advice. You're like, you know what? Mm-hmm. You were 22. You were doing the best you can. You could, don't sweat it now. But I had this dream where I think I was working at Marvel. I'm not really sure because it didn't even matter. And it was a suburban environment. So it didn't look anything like that. But anyway, I was leaving for the day. And I went out. I was leaving outside. And outside, wherever this place I was working, in the front door was a package. I opened up the package. And it was solicitations from a comic I did right out of college. So it's like right out of college, this is the late 80s, the black and white boom. I had no idea what I was going to do. This is pre-Marvel. I had no work lined up. So I was like, well, let's try self-publishing a comic. So I actually drew 2 issues of it. And I was actually learning to draw comics then because I didn't really know what I was doing. And didn't get enough solicitations for any kind of sales or whatever. It appeared in like an issue of Previews or something. I forget which. I'll have to dig that out. But it's like I've had the art for that comic like tucked away for 30-something years now. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think I've ever dealt with that. I don't think, because like I said, most of my old art I can look at and give that young guy a break. But I don't think I've ever looked at those pages in 30 years and given that young guy a break. And I'm like, I'm going to have to dig those out again. So what art do you have lying around, Wilson, that you haven't looked at in that many years?
I tend to, I have a cabinet full of black books that every now and then I'll take them out and I'll go through my sketches and stuff like that.
Okay.
Things that I had printed, comic book wise, most of my early stuff is coloring. So to me, it's it's coloring over artists. No,
I've actually gone through my terrible old sketchbooks. And giving that young guy a break, because you look at your sketchbook, you're 19. I'm like, ooh, I've given that young guy a break, but somehow I haven't given the 22-year-old Jared a break. I've skipped that period.
20-year-old Wilson didn't produce that much art, It was
Okay.
24-year-old Wilson started producing more artwork. And that's when I realized drawing comics is completely different once you start working in comics. And I learned that because I wasn't my first love was advertising. That's what Wilson was going to do. Was going to go into advertising. So my dream of doing comics was just that, a dream. I didn't think it was going to happen. So my focus was advertisement and graphic design. So I was enjoying that kind of idea. And when I happened to stumble into getting to work in the comic industry, then I learned a whole lot of different things, which was that the artwork that I learned to do was not going to help me in comic books. And it's like, so for me to do comic books, I had to learn how to draw comic books while I was at Marvel, because it was a different animal than I thought it was. Yes, I had the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
Right.
I had the tryout book. I never opened the tryout book to actually do that stuff. I had that as a collector, that I have one of these. That is neat. So same thing with How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. I had it. I read it. I did not understand it. And it wasn't until I actually started doing it, things started to click. So reading that book, it was abstract. Actually doing the artwork and then knowing what was involved in the creation of comics, it started to click more that, so I, comic book fan for many a years, 13 years before I even showed up at Marvel, I was a comic fan, but art-wise, I did not know. So I didn't draw my first sequential story until after I was in Marvel. And again, while I was there, it was more of, let me give that a try. So my first...
this was the first time after I graduated college for art school that I tried to draw an actual sequential story.
Right. So my first sequential story was for a small company called Committed Comics. And that was because the editor-in-chief and I shopped at the same comic book shop. So he was like, if I ever start a comic book company, would you work for me? And I said, sure, no problem.
Why are you going to say no?
Yeah, exactly. So it was like, would you do stuff? So my first sequential work is with them. And it was an 8-page story that I drew. I think I drew it in Puerto Rico because I was on vacation when I was actually drawing it. And it was very Gil Kane. Art-wise and storytelling, because I think I took something from Gil Kane and kind of put it into the story where the character is falling. And Gil Kane had that panel that fell with the character. And I did something very similar to that. And that's when I realized I didn't want to do penciling. Story-wise. So that's why I gravitated more to doing inking. And my other published work was either coloring or inking. And the Wilson that I have not forgiven yet is the first lettering Wilson. It was lettering manga. Going like, I was so proud of it, and I showed it to everybody. And the worst thing I did is I showed it to other letterers. I was like, okay, this is wrong. This is wrong. Here, this is wrong. This is incorrect. And it's like, and I used, and then, I learned from that and went on it. So early Wilson lettering, it was
that's
very
the guy
hard
you got to give a break.
That's the guy I got to give a break to, because what I see in bad lettering now is like, I did the same thing.
Right.
When I first started, my balloons were, it wasn't the balloons, because manga, the balloons are there. You're stuck with what manga has. But it was the the serif on the eyes and spatial and stuff like that. Not really paying attention to the kerning and things like that, because it was just like, hey, I put it in with the computer, because I never hand lettered. So this was all done on the computer, and it was more like, I thought it was just copy and paste and you were on your way. But there's little nuances and, what letters might be a little further away and stuff like that. So it's taken a while to forgive that, Wilson. And still, every now and then, I'll find something and go, I've been doing that wrong for years, and nobody told me about it. No one called me on it, and I stumbled onto little things here and there. It's like, oh, okay. So to this day, I'm still learning. I had gotten recently, I haven't read it yet, but I got in the mail because I ordered it through Amazon. Is the comic book lettering book.
Okay.
So again, I'm still learning, even though I've been doing it for years. So to me, it's like I've been forgiving that Wilson. And then the other Wilson that I need to forgive and give break is the Wilson that should be publishing his own personal comics. And I've been sitting on it because there's really no reason why issue 1 and issue 2 have a 10-year gap from working on. So that's the Wilson that I gotta forgive, but also kick him in the butt to, finish up the rest of the stories. So looking at old artwork, I tend to try to remember the viewpoint of it at that time. I have more inking samples of stuff that I pull out and go, oh, I remember where I was working on this. There's a lot of stuff on vellum over like
me too. I got a bunch
Butler.
Of pages on vellum.
Yeah, so I have stuff on vellum, the things that I had tried out from Marvel, and I never look at the old writing. Writer Wilson does not exist because I wrote a few what if stories for Marvel, and the first thing they did was like, we're going to pair you up with this writer and see what you could come up with. And it was like it never really went anywhere. So it's like, oh, I'm not going to be writing.
You just made me wonder. Like I said, I haven't seen these pages they're just stuck in the cabinet down in my. But like I said, since it was my pre-Marvel days, I wonder how I lettered them because I probably didn't know that much about lettering. Like I learned how to letter at Marvel. So how was I lettering pre-Marvel? I don't know. I'm gonna have to look now and see when I pull these out and give young Jared a break. But this comic was also influenced a lot by Mage, in that it was about magic, and I used myself as a model for the lead character, like Matt Wagner did, just because I wanted a model for the lead character. It was easier to draw seeing something than not.
Yeah,
I haven't seen those pages.
My first pre-Marvel comic that I did was based on characters from the comic book shop, and a buddy of mine wrote it, and I drew it. This was back when I was drawing very similar to like Chris Giarrusso's artwork, with very cartoony style, and I penciled and inked it. And the way that I letter it, or I started to letter it, is that I would type it out, Xerox that copy, and then cut it out and paste it onto the board. That's how I was lettering it. And I remember doing things like the narration boxes would be just pasted on there. And then the word balloons, I have to look it up again. It's been so long since I looked at it. I think I pasted the word balloons as well, just so I didn't have a handwritten portion on it. So I typed everything up.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give. Like I said, I'm gonna have to, because I had that dream of that person giving me all the old paperwork to the stuff I sent out. I'm gonna have to go dig those pages out and go, well, I haven't thought. It was my subconscious saying, "Forgive yourself," because that's what I was doing. And the dream, looking at those, going, "Oh my God, I remember. I haven't thought of them in years." And that's what I thought. I heard Louise Simonson saying, give that young kid a break. I was like, okay.
That is some great advice. That I'm going to take to heart as well.
Give that young kid a break. Let's see what Sleepy has to say. There are so many Spanish and Italian artists who seem to be at Marvel and DC currently. Wonder if the pay is better here or do they get lesser artists? The pay is better I believe that the pay is better for most places except Japan, because I know that was Ike's plan in the early 2000s to get, that was CB Cebulski's job in the early 2000s at Marvel, was to go around to all these different countries and find artists Marvel could hire for cheaper than.
But even then, it's always been that way. the Spanish were working for the British market as early as the 1960s. The Italians were working for the second division French market as early as the 1950s.
And I think it's also just that the dollar is usually strong.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a strong international currency in general, sometimes not as strong as others. But that means that, dollars buy more euros than they used to. Like, I don't know what the current exchange rate is.
But even then, it's not. They do pay more for art in the U.S. than they do in Italy. In Italy, as an industry, in Spain doesn't.
And I know I brought up his name once before. His name's David Macho. Friends on Facebook. I met him once. He is I believe he's based in Spain. He's an agent. He's a comic book artist agent. So, and I couldn't tell you what his roster is, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's hugely responsible for the influx of Spanish Italian art.
That was Ike's strategy for saving money. Finding cheap foreign talent. Yeah. Love hearing those old stories and anecdotes, Jared. Louise Simonson's one of my favorite Marvel writers and editors. I reread her Power Pack New Mutants and X Factor runs over and over as a kid. And she's a very nice person, too.
Yeah.
And I totally forgot about Alex Nino and Tony de Zuniga, the other Filipinos.
Yeah. Power couple, Wheezy, Walt and Wheezy.
Yep. So fun hearing those stories about the old strictly analog days, gentlemen. Gotta head out. Peace. Okay. Yeah. Have a good one.
Have a good night.
We haven't seen AFPC in a while. He hasn't been showing up at live streams lately.
Graphic Man is giving you inside messages, fellow.
Yes. It's for the Geeky Puppet Show.
I have done what you had asked regarding Wyatt.
Because in the Geeky Puppet Show, they read old Marvel comics in a humorous fashion. And I asked Graphic Man to do something humorous.
And he said, no, I don't like humor.
And he had to learn how to do it.
Yeah, I think...
So I got some books.
Oh, what do you got?
So I went to Midtown to just basically see what they had because I was in the area and I was like, because I was returning that book back to the library, that Grendel book. So it's like, since I'm out, let me go and hit Midtown. So I was only really just going to pick up the Spider-Man books that I did not have. So I picked up a couple of back issues. So while I was there, from the Spider-Man stuff, the Amazing Spider-Man, so it's issue 14. Yes. So issue 14.
It's the old search for the issue number on comics these days.
16.
16.
And 17. So hopefully that catches me up on what I'm missing from Spider-Man, but I have to sit down and go through them. And then I was not aware that IDW was having another series of Godzilla. So Godzilla All Hail the King. So issue 4. So one of the things that I do like about Midtown Comics is they do have some back issues. So I was able to track down issue 1 and issue 2 of Godzilla, and it's still the same cover price. No, it's not actually. It went up about $1.50 to get the back issues. I'm still missing issue 3, and I don't know how many. Usually these run about 5 or 6 issues, but I was actually surprised.
Can they reorder stuff for you?
They probably can. I just I tend to like to hunt sometimes because this is what I found at Midtown by Grand Central Station. I didn't check to see them on Midtown on Times Square. So it's more of like, I'm sure if I did ask for them, they could track it down for me. But it was more of one of those things, I don't know when the next time I'm going to be in the city. I don't want them holding on to the book. So it's more of like, I wasn't even aware the Godzilla ones were out. I'm going to read the first issue and then decide, am I going to continue with these or not? So it's like
that's one of the main differences between New York City comic book buying and suburban comic book buying.
Right.
It's like in New York City comic book buying, you stop by and see what they have. Suburban comic shops all live and die by their pull lists.
Right.
So it's like, I get everything I get is on my pull list. And if I miss an issue, I'm like, can you reorder that for me? And they're like, sure. And then just put it in my bag. In New York City, it's like, they sometimes, like you said, have a big, if they'll over order some stuff and then have it in the back issues, and you can go and get it. Maybe you can maybe get books a few months old. But if like suburban comic shops, their margins are razor thin, so there's going to be no extra issues of Godzilla in their shop, because they figured out exactly how many they could sell.
Right.
Don't do any over it.
Exactly. It's like, I know off the top of my head at least 6 places in New York City that I can go and check.
Right.
So it's like, no matter where I am in the city, it's like, oh, I think I know where the nearest comic book shop is.
Right.
And then I would just head there to it. And then if I find that, oh, I cannot find this, then the next thing I would do is probably order it online. Because again, I don't have a home shop, so to speak.
You can probably order it online from Midtown Comics.
Most likely I can. I have a problem navigating their website.
Right. Oh, okay.
That's the only reason why I haven't really opened a box with them. I can't figure out how to navigate it. When I think about it and I go to it and I look at it, and it's like, okay, I can check off what I'm interested in, but I think there is a limit of, you can't just order one book a month.
Right.
I think you have to do a certain amount to get a box or what have you. And I haven't, and it's my fault for not really looking into it. The moment it got a little difficult, it's like, I'll just buy it at the shop.
Right. I understand that.
So I end up doing that. But again, it's like one of those things. I'm sure if I ask for it, they'll get it from me, because they have, 3 locations in Manhattan, and then they have their warehouse location as well. So, and that's just Midtown alone. So,
what's weird for me in buying comics? I usually buy my comics with cash.
Mm-hmm.
This week I spent pretty big week. I spent $41 on comics, 11 comics, I think that was, which is a big week for me. Usually I like to keep it around 25 to maybe 30 these days because comics are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But I got no problem with that. I had $40 in cash with me. I made sure I had $40 in cash. I handed them the cash. I got my comics. But meanwhile, on something like mycomicshop.com, I've had stuff on my wish list, which I really don't need. It's just filling in holes of comic series that I don't even read, like some Spirit stuff from the 80s, some Strangers in Paradise stuff from the 90s, some Bone stuff from the 2000s. And it's like, I just read all of Bone digitally, so I really don't need these comics. And also, it's like $10 shipping. So sometimes I go, oh, what comics do I want to get from mycomicshop.com? And I put them in there, and it all adds up to like $45, which I just spent this week in cash. And I'm like, that's too expensive. I'm not going to buy it. And I put it away. Because when I buy something with my credit card, it just keeps adding up until the end of the month. So all of a sudden, like $40 in cash each week is fine for me. But when I pay for something by credit card, sometimes it's like not paying for it with money. And next thing you know, you have a $500 bill at the end of the month. You're like, $500? How did that happen? Because you spent $20 here, $40 here, $20, and you don't have to pay for it till the end of the month. So I'm always more cautious about buying comics online, and like overly cautious even. It's like, you know what? If I had 40, I would hand them $40 cash for these comics right now, but I can't. It's weird.
I mean, my comic shops, their affiliate programs, you know what I'm talking about?
Their affiliate program?
Do you know what affiliate program is?
No.
Amazon.
I know it.
Amazon's really the company that kind of like really made this a thing probably like 15 years ago. But basically, if you have a website, blog, whatever, if you're in their affiliate program, if you have a link
Oh,
especially
if they go through your link, you get a cut.
Correct. So I had a couple of kind of small micro-sized comic related that had some traffic though, and I had my comic shop affiliate link. So like, and they'll let you know like every twice a year or 3 times a year how much affiliate money you've just earned, right? So this is years ago. Also had $300 from them in credit. And because they get 15%. So I said, I think happened. I bet you someone had clicked their link and bought one book that was like wherever the math backwards is. Like they bought like $1,000 book, a $2,000 book. And that's how we came perfectly like $300. So I was like, fuck, let's go shopping. So I filled a lot of holes in my collection that way. But really my friend who I've known from selling comics since like the late 80s, he has 2 stores in New Jersey, Zap Comics. He has 2 locations. He's the guy who has a very robust kind of buying and selling. But he's constantly flipping inventory. So if I have a wish list to fill in holes in my collection, I've done this with him. Like I need here, these are the issues of West Coast Avengers I need. Here are the, just stuff that I had holes in my collection. And they have a warehouse in New Jersey and he's inexpensively could really fill that stuff for me. But I haven't, since I'm not in the suburbs and I haven't been going like to Midtown or Forbidden Planet. I miss kind of going and looking at the wall and seeing what's out, what jumps out at you. Paulo gets sick of me.
Paulo disappeared. Lost away from
I think he'll be back. But I miss that kind of experience of like, one of the memories I have is like, I know exactly when it was, probably July 86, 13 years old, going to my comic shop, which I just started going to, the first one ever. And I hadn't started growing yet. So one of the top shelf comics came out was Electra Assassin. And I had to ask an adult, can you get me Electra Assassin? Because I couldn't even reach it. It was on the top shelf. But that was, I missed that. Things that you didn't even know were coming out. I remember when I first started collecting, I love that, Punisher miniseries, right? And so they were telling me the story. There's Punisher 2, which would turn out to be the ongoing series that Klaus Janson had was, so, oh my God, that's kind of, and then you start to become aware from house ads and from Marvel Age, or also what's coming out in DC, whatever their DC updates are, or remember DC had a physical thing that was almost like comic shopping. It was just DC Comics. It was DC Direct Currents. Yeah.
DC Direct Currents.
I still have some, and that's how you know about the new DC stuff coming out. Right. That ran for a while, Wilson, but it was definitely, late 80s definitely was around. That's how I know about DC. Remember they had tried all these books in the late 80s post-crisis that were so, even outside the box. There was stuff that I had never heard of, about Forever People. I didn't know that was a Kirby world thing. But there was Electric Warrior that had these Ken Stacy covers that I really liked, and there was the Wanderers also had Ken Stacy. Was Wanderers a Kirby thing? I don't know, but
I don't think Wanderers was Kirby.
No. There's all the stuff they tried. There was Silver Blade, which was this mini series about this.
I still have Gene Colan.
Yeah, he's a theatrical. The character was a movie actor or stage actor who became the characters he was playing or something. I forget.
I have not read it since the 80s, but it's in my Gene Colan section with
Cinder and Ash,
Cavern and Night Force.
Cinder and Ash, that was drawn by.
I did a blog series for a Portuguese blog where I listed the publishing evolution of DC Comics on its way to becoming Vertigo. For all of that stuff that started in 1982 with Camelot 3000.
Oh, okay. Vertigo started 93 ish.
Vertigo starts in 93. So it's launched the brand's launched in 1993.
But there's all those books. I'm sure it was Sandman, Hellblazer that were very Vertigo. Black Orchid, very Vertigo-ish before it was
Swamp. Because there were things that DC had that could have become Vertigo. But didn't. And that includes Mike Grell's Green Arrow, because Mike Grell quits just the month that Vertigo is launched. Although I'm not sure that they would have wanted to put Green Arrow in Vertigo But for example, The Question
That's a good
could have been a Vertigo book, and The Shadow at the time could have been one as well. So all of those comics that they put out, Clash, The Naz by Brian Talbot, those could have been Vertigo, but they never became. They weren't reprinted.
And
even Books of Magic, the Books of Magic miniseries, it wasn't it came out before Vertigo, just as Neil Gaiman's the Black Orchid, but they were reprinted in Vertigo.
And would something like Night Force be a proto Vertigo book?
I'd say so, yeah. Night Force was.
Is that one of those Coluto or Vest covers? That was
no, but it was Gene Colan.
Oh, I'm thinking of Time Warp.
Time Warp, that was that great logo.
Yeah, that's why I did the curly.
That was like a sci-fi anthology, I think.
Yeah,
I never actually got to see any of those issues.
Did you guys ever notice that DC had that New Talent Showcase book?
Right, early '80s, right?
But in some places, the trade dress kind of resembles Vertigo design for the editorial pages.
I've never noticed. Nope.
Maybe it's just me, but take a look and see if you agree. There's some trade dress there that kind of looks alike.
They remind me. I used to like a lot of the clever names for like the letters columns. That were like New Mutants had like report card, I think, and there was like
let's rap with Cap, the best column name ever.
Was that really one of the?
Yeah, in the 70s.
Yeah.
Let's rap with Cap.
But there were I've been taking a look at some of the additions in the Grim Comics database, and they did that with a lot of characters, because for a time Daredevils was let's level with Daredevil.
Right. What was the Hulk's like? Something Jade Joe. He had some weird ones. I remember. I can't remember now from my childhood.
I can remember the Hulk.
I don't recall them.
But let's rap with Cap. I'll never forget.
Yeah, the Brazilians, the Hulk's letters page was called Gamma Mail. Correio Gamma. It's actually more funny in English, but it's just Gamma Mail in Portuguese for the Hulk.
Gamma.
Yeah, I remember it being called Gamma Mail.
Yeah,
one of my favorite letter pages thing that they ever did, and it was the only one that I was aware of, was the X-Men. Was that the X-Men themselves were answering the letter pages, and each month it would be another X-Men answering the pages. And I think this was during the Claremont run, so I don't know who was writing them. Could have been Claremont himself, whatever. But the letter pages, I remember the Wolverine one. It's just like there'll be an introduction of who's doing it, and then Wolverine's all it says, now it's my turn. And he basically is answering questions. And the one that stood out was like this kid wrote about how much he enjoyed Wolverine and just singing his praises. And Wolverine, the answer it always stuck with me was that Wolverine was taken aback. He's like, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And that, a warrior is measured by his enemies, but a man is measured by his friends. And I thought, for a comic book thing in the back of the page, that was a profound thing that, if you were that kid getting your mail answered by Wolverine.
That was a pretty good answer.
Well, in the letters pages, was that mainly the responsibility of the assistant editor?
Yes, because it was a freelance job sometimes to do that, and they would supplement their incomes by writing the letters pages.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like one assistant editor would do some other office's letters page, and they'd go.
I used to love when they would acknowledge hate mail, like waves of hate mail. The one that sticks out to me was 86, 87. So Wonder Man, they changed his costume. He had like the jetpack. It was a pretty hideous costume. It was supposed to homage the Vision colors, like the red, green, yellow, but it was just particularly hideous. And so it took because of the lead time to change things. Like they changed the costume because they had so much, but they acknowledged in the letters column, like it was just like universally reviled. But yeah, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of blogs about like, worst costume change, like, updates. Like, there was that Aquaman one, remember, that had like the swirly, like,
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
I'm gonna end the show now with my favorite piece of hate mail that Fabian Nicieza used to have up on his door, which he doesn't remember. I've asked him about, but he had a letter up on his door that said, from somebody sent a letter in, and part of the letter it said, "Let's build a time machine and send Fabian to the future so he can suck there too." I just always love that. So that was my favorite piece of hate mail that Fabian had like taped up to his office door in the 90s. Like I've asked him about it. He has no memory of it. And I'm like, I remember. Let's build a time machine and send Fabian to the future so he can suck there too.
My favorite hate mail that flipped was I think it was a Quasar issue where Tom Brevoort was the editor of it at the time, and he posted on it on the top, where Fantastic Four is World's Greatest Comics. It had it on there like voted the worst comic ever.
Oh, was that Eric Larson's Defenders?
Was it?
It was early 2000s. It was the Defenders. Eric Larson was drawing it. I forget who wrote it. And it said like possibly the worst comic of all time or something. And it came from a letter that someone wrote or a review even.
Yeah, I think it was from a review. They just stuck it on the cover. It's like, here's the review.
You lost Paulo again.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll say good evening to everybody else out there.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Take care, everybody.
You all have a good night. We'll catch you next week.